Akandi?
So we're live recording. I make it that there's 2 minutes to go. We'll just hold, wait for other participants to arrive. We shall start our webinar now. I think people are still joining, but let me just give a big welcome. It's good evening here in India. This time I'm speaking to you from Sridham Mayapur. It's afternoon. Good afternoon to all those in Europe and perhaps Australia. And in America, good morning. And for some, a very good early morning. Anyway, this is session 4, the last of this year's summer school sessions with the BI. And we do have a very excellent set of speakers. I'm going to go straight in and introduce them. We'll have a number of individual speakers. Hopefully there is a little time for each of them because there's more speakers, a little less time. So I hope there's time for some questions as we go along. But otherwise, we hope that in the panel, to wrap up things at the end, we'll be able to tackle some of the questions that maybe didn't get addressed. So first off, we have Tiziano Valentuzzi, also known as Giridhari Das, and he has a PhD in astronomy from the Padua University in Italy, and he's working at the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies and close collaboration on topics of cosmology and astronomy of ancient Vedic texts. Particularly, he is helping to the research for the Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium, which we're going to hear more about a little later. So straight over to Giridhari Das.
We need just a few seconds to get things up and running here.
Thank you, Giridhari.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for inviting me. So let's go straight forward to our presentation today. I'm sharing my slides. Can you see and can you see my slide presentation?
Yes, we can see. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay. So we are going to speak about a consciousness-based universe where science meets metaphysics. This can be considered the central topic of the Bhaktivedanta Institute mission. So make science embrace again metaphysics, and obviously, particularly Vedic metaphysics, because of its antiquity and importance in our movement too. So science and metaphysics should work together. However, when religion, using metaphysics as its highest authority, try to suppress science and the rational analysis of the phenomenal world, what we can perceive with our senses and intelligence, this is the phenomenal world. A rift emerges in society, which is gradually dehumanizing our civilization. This is a very important point. Metaphysics means beyond the physics. It deals with what we cannot perceive with our senses, the intangible aspects of reality. In contrast, physics studies the tangible world. There has not always been a struggle between science and metaphysics. On the contrary, they were once integrated to such an extent that the scientist and the metaphysical expert were one and the same person, the philosopher. The term philosopher comes from the Greek words philo, meaning love, and sophia, meaning wisdom. Wisdom here is not mere knowledge or academic expertise, but the ability to apply knowledge practically in everyday life. So practically meaning in practice, in everyday life. In Sanskrit, this concept is known as Vijnana. A philosopher is literally someone who loves and seeks wisdom, Vijnana. To achieve Vijnana, the wise use two essential tools, the scientific method and metaphysics. But where should a serious search for wisdom begin? It should start from what is undeniable, from the cornerstone of our knowledge, the answer to the most fundamental question, who am I? The answer is unequivocal to the most. We have seen Akandadis Prabhu presentation in the first session of this summer school, speaking particularly of this concept. So the answer is, I am conscious. I am the source of consciousness. No one can deny that we are conscious. We are sure that consciousness exists because we experience it directly every day. It is a self-evident truth, we could say. Jiva Goswami defined that, so to be a self-evident truth, a form of Shabda. Supporters of naturalism and materialism argue that consciousness emerges from matter. In contrast, those with a teleological view of the universe support the idea that consciousness is fundamental and pre-exists matter. Modern scientific research lacks evidence for consciousness and mind being correlated with states of the brain. So it appears that consciousness and mind cannot be reduced solely to brain activity. The idea that consciousness is not merely a product of the brain is gaining traction, supported by scientific evidence from near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, resuscitation cases, and reincarnation studies. And this is not everything science is going on to study. And we have seen in this summer school that we have sections, departments of the Bhaktivedanta Institute really involved in this kind of studies. These phenomena have been scientifically studied by many experts in many fields. As science and technology advance, we continue to discover new clues about our existence as sentient beings independent of the body. The Vedas, particularly texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavata Purana, propose the brain-mind-Atma model. The Atma is the source of our subjective experience. It refers to the self, the conscious self, or the individual consciousness. This Vedic metaphysical model provides a comprehensive framework for understanding the interaction between consciousness, the body, and phenomenal reality. According to Vedic metaphysics, we, as conscious beings, Atmas, interact with the body and the mind, both seen as instruments for us to be used, and with phenomenal, quote-unquote, reality. When applied to day-to-day life, this Vedic model helps enhance our choices, lifestyle, and relationships. It helps us understand that we are more than just physical beings with instincts. We are conscious beings with a deeper essence. This awareness can lead to a more meaningful and enriched life. So it's really a very important topic to study upon for all of us. These issues have been pondered by humanity for millennia, searching for meaning and purpose. The ancients loved looking at the sky, aspiring to elevate themselves. And even in recent centuries, we used to have a much richer and deeper connection to the heavens. True human aspirations involve seeking elevation and pursuing it. And the most basic form of elevation is simply raising our gaze towards the sky, a sky that is now often obscured by air and light pollution. The sky is lost or has been stolen. This image on the far left shows how the night sky appears today in a city. Practically a plain gray surface, maybe a few stars here and there, and that's it. In contrast, the far right image depicts how the night sky looked during the time of the Vedic sages, who retreated into the forest to pray and meditate on the concepts we are discussing today. It is an explosion of beauty, stars, planets, and the moon moving across the sky, alignments of celestial bodies, solar and lunar eclipses, and the spectacle of the Milky Way full of lights and shadows that fascinate us. The ancients endeavored to calculate and deeply understand all of this because true understanding only comes from deep knowledge. And this is truly what we find in some sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, the Surya Siddhanta, and other Siddhantas. The scientific study of the cosmos has always been part of humanity's quest for understanding. In the past, there was no division between science and metaphysics. The pursuit of knowledge and civilization advanced by synthesizing both fields. So I was acknowledged that there is not YouTube live stream, so if this can be useful. So if we could once again look up at a starry sky with the same admiration as the ancients, a profound question would naturally arise from the depths of our hearts. Could the universe itself be the product of a cosmic consciousness? And might it even be self-aware? Some may dismiss these questions as too far-reaching, too teleological or biased. Yet, it is a logical consideration, especially today that we have powerful space telescopes, cutting-edge theoretical models, supercomputers that can simulate and create hundreds of thousands of universes to study their evolution and structure. If you go far beyond enough, some amazing pictures reach our eyes. Here on the left, you can see an image of a neural network inside the human brain. On the right, you can see a cosmic network of galaxies created through computer simulations, confirmed by data from space telescopes. The similarity between the two is striking. And here I have also a reference of two Italian guys that studied this. The cosmic network closely resembles the neural network of our brain, and it is extremely intriguing to see how even the large-scale structure of our universe suggests that it may be based on consciousness, that the Atma could be the foundation of everything tangible. There are many modern cosmological theories that have remarkable parallels with the descriptions and stories found in ancient Vedic texts. One such theory is the computational universe, one of the most futuristic and recent ideas. Some cosmologists and philosophers of science envision the universe as a vast computational machine, where the laws of physics are algorithms processing information. This perspective suggests that it is possible to describe the events in our universe with a gigantic computational software. We can imagine a supercomputer running software that makes the universe function, with each of us interacting and experiencing certain portions of the universe based on our computational capacity. Stephen Wolfram could be envisioned as the father of this kind of theories, and here something that he said in 2002, so this is 22 years now, going more and more into details about this kind of theories, and more connection with the Vedic metaphysics are coming out. So he says 3 centuries ago, science was transformed by the dramatic new idea that rules based on mathematical equations could be used to describe the natural world. What I have discovered is that there is another whole class of rules that must also be considered. Rules that are not based on traditional mathematics, but instead on very simple computational processes. Some scientists are also viewing the universe as informational, meaning that there is a substrate of information more fundamental than space-time. Space-time, once thought to be the fabric on which everything else existed, is no longer considered as fundamental by many physicists. This shift is due to ongoing research on recent findings from the Geneva Particle Superaccelerator for the microcosm and the James Webb Space Telescope for the macrocosm, which challenge the idea of space-time as the root of our phenomenal world. Instead, there appears to be something more fundamental, known today as the information field. In essence, it could be argued that the universe evolves in every minute detail because of a vast container of information and a supercomputer that processes this information. At every moment, the supercomputer takes blocks of data from this cosmic database and projects the next scene of the universe. This model suggests a continuous flow of information processing that underlies the physical reality we experience. I know, it sounds far-fetched, but these are some of the most advanced scientific theories gradually shaping our understanding of cosmology and particle physics. Quantum physics itself can be seen as a process of information manipulation. Currently, there is a significant challenge in reconciling quantum physics with relativity. Both theories are valid, but seem to work independently without a clear connection. The information model might offer a solution. If we consider that beyond space-time, there is something more fundamental, an informational network or database that governs the universe, then quantum mechanics starts to make more sense with what we observe. These ideas are not just personal speculations, but are among the leading theories driving contemporary scientific discussion. So, could information be fundamental? It makes sense because we understand that information precedes a physical reality. Therefore, it shouldn't be surprising that the universe has an information substrate. Creating anything requires applying a series of computational algorithms to transform a project or an information into a tangible object. Consider a seed, which contains the entire blueprint for a tree, its flowers, its fruits, each containing more seeds. The project is inherent in the seed. Similarly, IKEA furniture comes with an instruction manual because it was previously designed to fit together perfectly. A 3D printer can create objects by printing them, turning a digital design into a three-dimensional object. This process is akin to the creation of a hologram, which is a three-dimensional projection of a pre-existing digital design. When building jet engines, engineers first create an electronic model, a digital twin. They test it virtually, applying all the laws of physics before building the physical prototype. This process involves rigorous testing under different conditions to ensure functionality, durability, efficiency, and safety, all done on the computer, on the digital twin, before any physical assembly begins. In the Vedas, there is a clear reference to a universal project called Virat Rupa. This form of the divine functions similarly to a digital twin. It is an information structure or model containing all the necessary details for creating the universe. Individual desires, karma, bodies, planets, galaxies, the laws of physics, and so on. The ancient Vedic text suggests that there is always a plan or an informational blueprint before any physical reality comes into being, aligning remarkably well with contemporary scientific understanding, as we have just seen. We can fairly conclude that in this ancient text, the idea of a universe based on information is clearly expressed. But where does the information come from? Despite all the complexity that modern science reveals, the cosmos seems to evolve as a coherent organism, woven together with intelligence and harmony. Vedic metaphysics claims that the information contained in the Virat Rupa is conveyed by the Atma's desires and aspirations, who need bodies and places to be experienced. If consciousness is the source, that means there is intention, purpose to the cosmos. So Atmas, bodies, and places, meaning our universe with all the planets, galaxies, and galaxy clusters it contains, it has a purpose. And the purpose is giving the Atmas the possibility to experience. In fact, in the Vedic vision of the creation and evolution of the universe, there is ample space for personal creativity and co-creation. Vedic metaphysics proposes that the creation and evolution of the universe is not a single act, but a collaborative process where the Atmas or individual consciousnesses contribute to the whole picture of the universe. And what do they contribute to? They help in creation. They help creating. So we can say that our universe is a consciousness-based universe in three ways. One, Atmas precede the universe as a tangible world. Two, Atmas are everywhere and interact with tangible matter. Three, Atmas co-create at almost every stage of existence of our universe. The concept of free will fits in here, allowing us to do good in this universe, creating beautiful things, fostering healthy and evolutionary relationships, or to do harm, creating destructive things that pollute, cause harm, generate hatred, fear, and danger, instead of protection, well-being, love. We have the responsibility for co-creation in this universe. This serves the purpose of the universe. Planets, worlds, more or less subtle, perhaps in different dimensions, serve the Atma to gain experience, satisfy desires and impulses, make plans and realize them. They also serve the Atma to participate in creation and find a way back to experience. If this universe is a kind of a computational one, then in a sense, if each of us is a programmer who can write our own software influencing how the universe functions. The more programmers there are, the more challenging it is to create an harmonious piece of software that works perfectly. Our relational capacity and spiritual evolution play a role in making our actions in the world harmonious and or disharmonious, or as expressed in Sanskrit, dharmic or adharmic. There has been extraordinary progress in modern cosmology, and I'm finishing, this is the last one, but at this point it is natural to ask, can science alone provide the answer to the origin and the purpose of the universe? Modern theories of cosmology, such as the Big Bang, the cyclic universe, the multiverse, when combined with Vedic metaphysics, in which consciousness is the basis of the cosmos and not the other way around, allow us to see the greater universal plan and understand our place in the universe. So, in conclusion, we suggest that anyone wanted to access real knowledge or wisdom, vijnana, of our existence and of our universe should adhere to an approach where science and metaphysics are harmonized and cross-pollinate freely. Thank you very much, and if you like, reach out and get involved.
Thank you very much. That was extremely precise and concise. Thank you. We've just got one question for you from one of the participants. You showed the slide of the neural network and of the cosmic web, and they're just asking, what is the cosmic web? Can you deal with that very briefly?
Yes, these are simulations on the computer where all the ingredients of the universe are put together and supercomputers are running the laws of physics and see how gravity and other physical laws are creating a universe. So with that, you can go far away and have a look of the universe from a very far point of view. And when you look from that distance, you can see that the galaxies are interconnected like the neurons, you know, of a brain. And this is also like confirmed by new databases of galaxies. Now we have very big databases that confirm that these simulations are actually how our universe looks.
Is there also a suggestion that different elements within the cosmic web exchange information?
That could be. That it seems to be for our Vedic metaphysics, it is actually, but I don't think there are actually data or theories now going as far as that. But I mean, the parallel is striking. It's amazing, actually.
Thank you very much, Kedar. We're going to have to move on to our next team of speakers. And that is, we're going to hear about cosmogenesis, and cosmogenesis is to do with what happens in order to give birth, if you like, or creation to a universe. This is going to be a combined presentation by Professor Doug Watson and Laura Dominic. Doug Watson's PhD in astrophysics, and Laura has just completed her master's on cosmology. Together, they're leading up a major research effort at the BIHS on the topic of cosmogenesis, which will have a major component within the Science Museum. So, who is starting first? We're not getting sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but faint, if there's any way of turning it up.
Okay. So today our topic is cosmogenesis. And so cosmogenesis is a field that is at the intersection of science and philosophy. So it addresses some of the most fundamental questions about our existence, our environment, and perhaps even can touch on the idea of purpose in the universe. It's a huge topic, both in the academic world, but it also has been very widely popularized for the general public. And yet, until now, the physical and metaphysical understanding of cosmology and of the cosmos are most often two distinct and separated pursuits. So Doug and I are very passionate about this subject, and we have been working and developing a new promising mathematical and metaphysical model that we feel will allow the Institute to contribute to the dialogue. So, what is cosmogenesis? So to start, it refers to the origin and the evolution of the universe. It includes the physical universe, all the laws, the structure, and the phenomena happening within it. It involves understanding the processes that led to the formation of the cosmos, from the very initial condition of the universe to its current state today. And so why does it matter? So citing the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, cosmology deals with a physical situation that is a context in the large for human existence. The universe has such a nature that our life is possible. So cosmology is not just about looking far away, looking in the sky and in the past. Its knowledge is being reflected back to Earth. Learning about the nature of things, their origin, their existence, the initiation, is learning about the context and the environment of our own life. It's learning about our own existence. So we can suddenly see interconnectedness, because despite all the complexity that is revealed by modern science, the cosmos seems to evolve as a coherent and harmonious and above all, intelligent organism. So this is a traditional picture in cosmology. You can start looking on the right of the picture, which is the present day now, today. And if you were to observe galaxy around you, what we find is that all the galaxies are receding from us. They are all moving away. So if we were to turn back the clock towards the left, perhaps it seems that we head toward a singular event. This is what we refer to as the origin of the universe. But however, there is a lot of observational evidence for this, but only up to a certain point. There are important and fundamental limits to science that we will see next. We have many different sources of limitation in the project of doing science. We have our limitation of empirical evidence from the scientific method. There are region and scale, energy scale of the universe that are fundamentally inaccessible to our instrument and to our observation. We have our mathematical framework, which is very powerful, but it might not be capable of describing every single aspect of reality in its complete form. We also have the limit of our human cognition and perception. Our sensory perception makes stubborn biases in our models. But perhaps most about the limit of science, the most important idea is described here by Freeman Dyson, that as human beings, we are groping for knowledge and understanding of the strange universe in which we are born. We have many ways of understanding, of which science is only one. Science is a particular bunch of tools that have been conspicuously successful for understanding and manipulating the material universe. Religion is another bunch of tools giving us hints as of a mental or spiritual universe that transcends the material universe. And now Doug will speak about the ideas behind the models that we have been developing and working on.
Thank you, Laura. So as she explained, we're at the sort of potential limits of empirical science as it pertains to the universe before the Big Bang. So it makes sense that an inherently interdisciplinary institution is well suited to explore this topic. And at the BI, we have expert Sanskritists, philosophers, historians, mathematicians. We have full-time astrophysicists and cosmologists. As you can see behind me, we have access to a vast library as well as online academic resources. So as if understanding cosmogenesis wasn't hard enough from a physical standpoint of view, she clearly thought that we need also a metaphysical understanding. This raises questions that we have to confront and address, like consciousness as a first cause in an eternal universe. In other words, how can something exist outside of space and time in an eternal universe? So this requires distinguishing between temporal causation, which is sort of like one event happening after another, which is what we do in physics. And then there requires distinguishing between metaphysical causation, which is the grounding of existence itself. Further, we have the notion of contingency and necessity. So contingent beings like ourselves rely on external factors for our existence. A primal consciousness is posited as the necessary ground for being. It's existing by necessity and is the source of all existence. Then there's the idea of the anthropic principle, which has many variations, but generally speaking, the suggestion is that the universe is finely tuned for our existence to experience it. Then there is a relationship between consciousness and matter, which Akunditi has spoken at length on, and the topic of the nature of space and time that Dr. Gurbutt has spoken on. So this is obviously a big task. and one that we're trying to develop what we're calling a consciousness-based universe model. So we're introducing a novel mathematical and metaphysical framework for modeling cosmogenesis and the emergence of a dynamically updating universe. And this is influenced by conscious intention. But remember, to paraphrase yesterday's talk, that the map is not the territory. We really want to emphasize that here, the math is not the territory. In other words, as scientists, we tend to overreach and over extrapolate with our models as if it were reality as it is. But this is just a model. But going with that, so if the universe is supported by consciousness and consciousness gives rise to information, as previous speakers like Giridhari has just mentioned, we need to explore the significance of intention and purpose. And then we can look at how information could be a carrier directed by consciousness. So with our consciousness universe, this is going to be reliant on intention and translate that into a manifested universe. So how can that be done? We know the physical laws about how the natural world arises. Intention acts as an ordering force for the evolution of the universe. So we consider the cosmos as what we call a well-ordered whole. We start with the premise of the universe as a comprehensive and kind of organic view of the cosmos that's supported by consciousness at the most fundamental layer. And we say that it's process-oriented. So what do we mean by that? Generally, in physics, we speak of reductionism, the fundamental building blocks from which the fundamental stratum of the universe gives rise to the macro. But this model is more process-driven. We explore how matter transitions from a potential state to an actual perceivable state by conscious entities. And this happens through the intentions of conscious beings like ourselves. But it also includes causal connections and the rules of the system in general. And this model is essentially relational. That means to understand the universe as a whole, coherent and harmonious system, we want to look at how its components are being defined through their interactions and their relations within this whole. The last property that we pose is that the universe is eternal and cyclic. So if you look at this diagram, it looks like the one that Laura showed, where you have the universe evolving in space and time back to some sort of singular event, which may or not be the case. Either way, a new universe will arise from that. So the universe is a continuous movement of the becoming of the cosmos, originating from consciousness in sort of an eternal dynamic process. Okay, so let's look at the model itself. This is, on the left-hand side, this figure, I'm just showing a very simple schematic of what is going on. These little blue circles, you can imagine, is sort of a causal web of conscious elements like ourselves. We have interactions with each other and with an external world. On the right, what you're seeing is sort of a network of pre-matter, basically the fundamental, essential building blocks of what can become matter. So these are like two interacting webs, and this is before space and time have emerged. So on the right, you'll see this feedback loop, which I'm going to explain with a simple analogy. It's just an analogy, but imagine yourself inside perfectly clear water, like a clear ocean. You don't have the other senses like a pressure or taste. All you're doing is looking. And there's nothing in that perfectly clear space where there are any relations forming. And you can't see the individual water molecules. But imagine a little patch of that where the temperature has just gotten much, much colder. So what do you know from that in your experience? Well, you get ice forming like a crystal. So now all of a sudden there is a perceivable landscape in front of you. It's now in a state where you can actually perceive it. And that's called a phase transition, like phase transition from ice to water. So in our model, what you have basically is on the left side, these conscious elements each have their own intentions. And as Akandati explained yesterday, there's sort of an aggregate intention among all of the conscious entities. That is translated and received by what we'll just call an ordering force that's governed by sort of the primal conscious agent. And that is directed to sort of order this field on the right of the elements that will become material matter. So what that does is it causes relations and interactions between these elements on the right that become more ordered and more structured, to the point where if they sort of achieve a really high level of ordering, it's like undergoing a phase transition. So what we're saying is what happens then is that matter has now gone from a potential state to a state that's real in space and time, to be perceived by conscious entities. So this is a lot to take in, but I'm just going through it quickly. What you're seeing in this diagram is on the left side. So imagine if you think of ice, it's very, on the micro level, it's very well structured. It's highly ordered. It looks like what we call a lattice on the left. So what we're showing here is before space and time, this matter, this pre-matter has become so ordered based on the intention and the ordering force that what happens is there's essentially a spontaneous creation of space and time on the right, basically a development of a material universe. So this is a pretty interesting way to think about it. So what makes this really unique is that now you have space and time being emergent from conscious intention. It gives a mechanism for how the universe can arise, but there are also other interesting repercussions. So looking at Laura's diagram, but now vertically, where you have sort of the initial event, let's say the cosmogenesis event at the top, and time going more towards today as we go down. As we perceive these events, there are relations occurring, and space emerges to basically accommodate these relations that we can perceive as a physical landscape. So physical space will be expanding the more and more relations occur. But that also means that our experiential landscape will keep growing. So over time, the universe will keep expanding and expanding, which is what we see in cosmology. And then ultimately, you sort of run out of potential relations and new interactions. So the universe sort of starts to wind down because there are less experiences for conscious entities. So this actually gives a natural and physical mechanism for the universe to exhaust itself and go back to a potential state. So now we have the mechanism for the beginning of a universe, a physical universe, and sort of the infolding of the universe back to a potential state where this cycle will just continue eternally. So these are some new insights that we think are going to be particularly of interest in the dialogue in the academic world, and hopefully in the public level as well, so that consciousness is fundamental to the universe. Space and time are emergent. They are not the fabric behind which everything else happens. Ordered relations give rise to a physical universe to be experienced by conscious entities, and the exhaustion of potential relations result in new cycles and an eternally evolving process. So this is really exciting. It's very preliminary, but given that, as Giridhari said, please reach out and get involved. We could use the help. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Doug and Laura. You've explained something which is very highly complex and maybe a topic that many of our listeners aren't familiar with, but perhaps there are some who are familiar with this, and we would encourage them to get in touch with you. There's no specific questions at this stage, but I think we'd all wish you well on the development of this model. I've seen the papers that they're developing, and it's seriously sophisticated, and I think what they have just offered. You've got just a little time, Doug or Laura, to answer one question from how do we find time and how do we define space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can consider time in different modalities throughout the evolution of the universe. But once the physical universe has arisen, what we're calling space is basically an event that occurs that can be perceived. And the updating of that event based on conscious intention is the perception of time. It's the flow of time that is the updating of this physical landscape. So that's how we're defining time in this case. If that's a little too technical, I can try again. Let me know.
Well, we've just got in the last minute or so that we have you as well as Gary Dory. He has just answered one of the questions in the chat, which said, can you explain how wisdom begins with who am I? And Gary Dory said, because the answer to that question, who am I, is self-evident from our point of view as jivas, and it is so undeniable, it's such an undeniable truth that we are conscious. So that's why the only thing we can know for certain is I exist as a conscious experiencer. That's the one thing that doesn't have to be proved by science or philosophy. You can have confidence in that. Another question, how can someone cooperate with cosmology scientific groups? And Giri Dari has asked them to write to info@bihstudies.org. I think that the email address and the website have been available through the materials on this summer school. Get in touch if you have an interest on that. Thank you very much, Doug, Laura, and Giri Dari for that little section. You've certainly, hopefully, whetted our appetite to learn more where that takes us. Now we move to our next speaker, and this is Dr. Natalia Anatonova, also known as Nari Devidasi. She's the Executive Secretary of the Council of the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Russia and the Director of the Institute of Consciousness in Moscow. She has spoken at our previous conferences. We're very pleased to have her with us today. She's going to be presenting on the BI in Russia, and it's good to hear some of their work. She's been assisted by a translator, Alexander Zalovin, also known as Adityavarna Das, who is a doctor of psychiatry and also involved in the BI there. So we're glad to see you both. Thank you very much. And we turn it over to you, Nari.
Hare Krishna. Good afternoon, dear friends and colleagues. I'm very glad to see you again this time at BI Summer School 2025. I'm very glad to see you, and my translator is Doctor of Science, Alexander Zalivin. Please, Alexander.
Oh, I'm glad to see you, dear participants also. Let's go to our speech. Go on, please.
Дорогие друзья и коллеги, позвольте... Еще раз, слышно меня, да? Все в порядке?
Is it okay with our presentation? PowerPoint is shown or not?
Да, демонстрация.
It's not showing as yet.
Ага, нужно включить презентацию, Imaginary.
Сейчас я включаю, да.
One moment, please. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. Yes.
Yes, we have something here. This is great. You can click the corner and just make it a full screen if you like.
F5 нажмите, пожалуйста, чтобы...
Я нажимаю, но почему-то он не хочет включить. Все в порядке.
Yes.
Все в порядке. Итак, прежде мне хотелось поблагодарить организаторов и спикеров за мероприятие, проведенное на таком высоком профессиональном и духовном уровне.
So first of all, let me thank the organizers and speakers for this event, which is held at such a high professional and spiritual level.
Итак, тема нашего доклада звучит следующим образом. Философский взгляд на историю Российского Бхактивиданта института «Вызовы времени».
So the topic of our report is as follows: a philosophical glance at the history of the Russian Bhaktivedanta Institute, challenges of the time.
Дорогие друзья, для начала мы считаем необычайно важным пониманием о том, что Институт Бхактивиданты – это целостный, синергийный, внутренний проект Шрилы Прабхупады. Каждое из его звеньев или звеньев цепи номинально создавалась в конкретных исторических условиях как самостоятельный проект, но по сути это независимость отдельной ветви дерева. Очевидно, что... Да. Угу.
At the beginning, we consider it is important to share the understanding that the Bhaktivedanta Institute is integral, synergetic, internal project of Srila Prabhupada. Each of its parts, links of the chain was nominally created in specific historical conditions as an independent project, but, however, de facto, it is the independence of a separate branch of the tree.
И очевидно, что у так называемого дерева проекта есть единые корни, которые питаются от тонких намерений, духовных мотивов и целей Шрилы Прабхупады.
It is obvious that the tree of the project has common roots fed by the subtle intentions, spiritual motives and goals of Srila Prabhupada.
В соответствии с законом причинно-следственных связей, Нимитани Випаритани, будущее рождается в настоящем. Именно сегодня своей деятельностью мы закладываем причины, которые в будущем принесут те или иные плоды.
According to the law of the cause and effect, Nimittani Viparitani, the future is born in the present. It is precisely today that though our activities are lying down, the causes that will bring certain fruits in the future.
Это понимал, например, Готфрид Вильгельм Лейбниц, и однажды он сказал, что весь будущий мир уже задан в мире современном.
Gottfried Leibniz understood this, so one day he said, the whole future world has already been set in the modern world.
Мы уже озвучивали на прошлых конференциях, что Российский институт Бхактивиданты прошел 4 этапа с точки зрения развития научной и практической компетенции его членов. Сегодня мы кратко расскажем о 1, 2 и 4 этапах и более подробно остановимся на 3-м, текущем этапе.
We have already announced at previous conferences that the Russian Bhaktivedanta Institute has passed through 4 stages in terms of developing the scientific and practical competence of its members. Today we will briefly talk about the 1st, 2nd, and 4th stages, and we'll focus on the 3rd stage, which is taking place now.
По мере того, как мы взрослели, становились опытнее и компетентнее в научном плане, менялись наши цели, подходы и методы деятельности. Так, в соответствии с нашим видением, 30-летний путь Российского института Бхактивиданты можно соотнести с 4 этапами научно-практической компетенции вайшнавов-ученых, членов РИП.
As we grew up, became more experienced and more scientifically competent, our goals, approaches, and methods were changing. So according to our vision, the 30 years path of Russian MBI can be correlated with 4 stages of scientific and practical competence of Vaishnava scientists, members of the Russian Bhaktivedanta Institute.
Этап 1 можно назвать следующим образом. Популяризация философии сознания Кришны в научных кругах и экспертных сообществах.
Была рука, Браматирха Прабhu поднимал. We have a hand, Brahmatirtha Prabhu. Okay. So the first stage, the popularization of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in academia and the expert community, late 80s and 90s of the 20th century.
Этап 2. Обращение к научной методологии сравнительного анализа западной и восточной культур. Конец 90-х, начало 2000-х годов.
Second stage took place from late 90s to early 2000s, and it was about turning to the scientific methodology of comparative analysis of Western and Eastern cultures.
И, наконец, 3-й этап презентация научных основ сознания Кришны как универсальной парадигмы. 2010 настоящее время.
Stage 3 is about presentation of the scientific foundations of Krishna consciousness as the universal paradigm from 2010 till present.
Это текущий и довольно продолжительный этап, направленность которого можно сформулировать, пожалуй, так. Ученые вайшнавы, работающие в различных областях знания, пытаются адаптировать научную парадигму, основанную на вайшнавской онтологии и эпистемологии в академической среде, и сформулировать ее на языке западной научной методологии.
So this is a current and rather prolonged stage, the focus of which can be formulated perhaps as follows. Vaishnava scientists working in various fields of knowledge are trying to adopt the scientific paradigm based on Vaishnava ontology and epistemology in the academic environment and formulate it in the language of Western scientific methodology.
Значимым событием для истории развития Бхактивиданта института стали научные конференции, организованные доктором наук профессором Алексеем Тимощуком, Абхинандой Дасом, на кафедре религиоведения Владимирского государственного университета в 2006-2009 годах.
A significant event for the history of the development of Bhaktivedanta Institute was the scientific conferences organized by Doctor of Sciences Professor Alexey Timoshuk Abhinanda Das at the Department of Religious Studies of Vladimir State University from 2006 to 2009. Along with Vaishnava scholars, other invited academic speakers also participated in the conferences.
Тематика конференции была следующей. Например, наука, религия, тексты, Махабхарата и Бхагавад-гита, традиции и интерпретации. Образ человека и мира в Махабхарате и Бхагавад-гите и так далее. Вы можете видеть название на экране.
So you can see the topics of these conferences, which were as follows: science, religion, texts, Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, traditions and interpretations. The image of a man and the world in the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, and so on.
В текущий период российские вайшнавы-ученые активно участвуют в тематических научных конференциях от Всероссийского философского конгресса в Нижнем Новгороде и Санкт-Петербурге до конференции, посвященной защите Бхагавад-гиты в Томске после неудачной попытки ряда лиц отнести священное писание к разряду экстремистской литературы. 2014 год.
In the current period, Russian Vaishnava scientists are actively participating in thematic scientific conferences, from the All-Russian Philosophical Congress in Nizhny Novgorod and St. Petersburg, to the conference dedicated to the protection of Bhagavad Gita in Tomsk after the attempt of some personalities to classify the Holy Scriptures as extremist literatures in 2014.
Следующий момент – это подготовка и публикация учеными Российского института Бхактивиданты 5 и 6 номеров журнала «Вайшнавизм. Открытый форум».
Next step is the preparation and publication by scientists of the Russian Bhaktivedanta Institute of the 5th and 6th issues of the journal magazine Vaishnavism and Open Forum.
Либо, допустим, выпуск Институтом сознания, подразделением Бхактивиданта института, серии научного журнала «Адвербум», дословно, и научно-популярного журнала «Точка отсчета», главный редактор Наталья Антонова, ответственный редактор Александр Заливин.
And there is released by the Institute of Consciousness, which is BI division, the series on scientific journals Adverbum, and the popular science magazine Point of Reference, editor-in-chief Natalia Antonova, executive editor Alexander Zalivin.
К третьему периоду развития Института Бхактивиданты России также относятся следующие диссертации, которые вы можете, дорогие друзья, видеть на экране. Их защитили такие вайшнавы, как Васушрешха Дас или Сокол, Нари Девидаси Антонова, Дамодар Пандит Дас Попов и Аудариатхама Дас Персунов.
The third period of BY development in Russia includes the following dissertations defended by Vaishnavas, such as Vasusheshka Das, Nari Devidasi, Damodar Pandit, and Audaryadhama Das.
Интересным проектом третьего этапа стали онлайн-конференции под названием «Про науку» или «О науке», а также «За гранью мысли». Они были проведены совместно с вайшнавской журналисткой из Омска Гаураприей Девидаси. В проекте принимали участие также и вайшнавы из Бхактивиданта Institute for Higher Study.
An interesting project took place as a series of online conferences. It was outreach conferences called Pro Nauka, literally about science beyond thought. They were 24 hours marathon. They were held by Gaurapriya Devidasi together with her, Tatiana Tarasova, a Vaishnavi journalist from Omsk. The project was attended and participated also by Vaishnavas from BIHS.
Декабрь 2016 года. Доктор наук Владимир Сокол, Васушевешха Дас, создает ашрам Института Бхактивиданты в городе Екатеринбурге. Членами ашрама являются молодые доктора наук и брахмачари одновременно. Основная цель ашрама – создание альтернативной научной парадигмы, базирующейся на вайшнавской антологии и гносеологии.
December 2016, Doctor of Sciences Vladimir Sokol, Vasusheshka Das, creates BI Ashram in Yekaterinburg. The members of the ashram are young doctors and scientists and brahmacharis at the same time. The main purpose of the ashram is to develop an alternative scientific paradigm based on Vaishnava ontology and epistemology.
Вы видели фотографии совместных, да, минуточку, да, это были фотографии, на которых можно было видеть вайшнавов института, вернее, ашрама института Бхактивиданты. Теперь перед вами, дорогие друзья, все, что связано с совместными мероприятиями Российского института Бхактивиданты и Бхактивиданта института по Higher Study. Среди этих мероприятий, например, конференции, такие как «Сознание в науке», другие конференции, поездка вайшнавов Российского института Бхактивиданты во Флориду, а также Мурари Гопала Даса, серия интересных лекций в Россию. Здесь мы видим эти фотографии, которых... Так, это точно, да? Они...
Экотеология.
Да, это почему-то экотеология. Где у нас?
Дальше.
Это дальше. Да, мы перескочили чуть-чуть.
So you can see the photos of Vladimir State University, which arranges the series of conferences of Russian BI. They are dedicated to ecoteology. And now you can see the photos of joint events which were held together with Murali Gopal Das, a devotee scientist from Florida who visited Russia. And he is a very nice devotee scientist. We will show some facts later.
Кстати, вот здесь очень интересный такой момент. Сейчас, минутку. Это не то. Что-то у меня оно заедает. Заедает.
Дальше. Да?
Не двигается, заедает сейчас. Заело. Все нормально, да.
Yeah.
Вот, допустим, очень интересный момент, связанный, кстати, скрипка. Это далеко не единственный талант, это один из множества талантов Мурали Гопала Даса. Здесь вы можете видеть этот фрагмент на фотографии. Да?
So that is a special talent of Murali Gopal Das, who can play the violin and It is taken in Yekaterinburg in one of the conferences together with Russian BI scientists.
Could we just give us the last summary, please?
Да, обзор последний тогда. К статистике, наверное, перейдем, заканчивать пора.
Последний. А мне хотелось бы 4-й этап, он очень важный. Тогда, если можно, мы
Yes,
перейдем к
one moment. The last
этапу.
whole stage is coming.
Да, последний этап. 4-й
It will
этап
take 1 minute.
развития Бхактивиданта института воспринимается пока как научная фантастика. Перейдете?
Mhm. So, the fourth stage is future, and its task is to formate a synergetic model of Vaishnava scientific school relevant to modern scientific methodology. And now it is perceived as science fiction.
Дело в том, что решение наиболее сложных задач 4-го этапа находится на уровне, превышающем национальный. И, очевидно, именно поэтому обстоятельства сложились таким образом, что Брахмачари Ашрам Российского института Бхактивиданты открывает свою штаб-квартиру в Майпуре, столице мирового ИСККОН. На его базе создается Майпурский институт Бхактивиданты. Его участникам предстоит решить непростую задачу – создать научную школу, способную стать альтернативой. По-видимому, для решения этой задачи потребовался портал в духовный мир, которым и является Майпур.
So that is the last point of our presentation. It says that the solution of the most difficult tasks for this fourth stage is obviously exceeding the national level. And obviously that is why the circumstances have developed in such a way that Brahmachari Ashram from Yekaterinburg in Russia, Bhaktivedanta Institute, opens its headquarters in Maipur Dham, the capital of global ISKCON. So the Maipur Bhaktivedanta Institute is created on its basis, and members will have to solve this difficult task to create a scientific school capable of becoming an alternative to modern scientific basis and paradigm. Apparently, this task required a portal to spiritual world, which is Maipur.
Дорогие
Thank you
друзья,
very much.
Сори, мы очень кратко рассказали об истории в динамике. В будущем мы расскажем об истории в статике. Благодарим вас за внимание.
Thank you so much for your attention.
No, thank you. That was an excellent presentation, Nari and Alexa. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you for kind of doing that. It's exciting for us to hear what's happening there in Russia. I think it's incredible the way you've got your 4 stages. You've been working through them. We're still in stage 3, you know, trying to get the establish this universal paradigm and its interest. But you have set yourselves an incredible task for the future. And I think all the bits are falling into place, and we hope that through the synergy that you will have with the BI and other elements in India, in Europe, and in America, we can really make this happen for all of us. Thank you.
And my thanks to you too. Thank you very much, Nari.
That's
Спасибо
great.
большое, Мари, тоже.
We
We will finish now. Thank you.
now move on to our next speaker. This is Jyoti Ranjan Buria, also known as Jyotishwar Das. He's got a PhD in physics and currently a postdoctoral researcher in the Indian Knowledge Systems and Mental Health Division at IIT Monday. And he's also the coordinator and principal investigator at the Institute of Science and Spirituality based out of Delhi or nearby. And he will be speaking today, giving us an overview of research and the outreach programs that are happening at the Institute of Science and Philosophy.
Yeah, spirituality.
Spirituality, yes. As I read that, I thought that whoever wrote that for me didn't get it right. Please carry on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful gathering. I've been following all the talks since last session, 13th. So it was really wonderful to hear all of you. So let me quickly go through the activities that we have been doing at Institute for Science and Spirituality. So me and many of our members shifting in some way to IIT Mandi. So IIT Mandi and activities at ISS, they're quite in sync. So you might find some similarities. So these efforts are dedicated to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and our beloved spiritual master Srila Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. So Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj started this forum back in 2011, and formally we got registered as a trust, non-profitable trust in 2020. So we have been following the journey henceforward. And recently, the Ministry of Education, Government of India granted us the status of IKS Research Center, and we are one of those 20 fortunate institutions across India who have been awarded this tag for IKS Research Center. So the primary objectives we have threefold rather. First is to develop a Bhagavad Sankhya inspired model for consciousness and how mind-matter interaction happens. And the second one is to investigate about our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the literature and the philosophy that it has. And then third is to disseminate and to educate people on these principles. So let me quickly go through our outreach activities. For the last couple of years, we have been organizing several conferences in India. So recently we collaborated with IIT Mandi as part of the co-organizer for MBCC, Mind Brain Consciousness Conference 2023. And you can see Prem Kishore Prabhu, Mr. Praveen Kumar, he's leading a special session on science of perception. And early part of 2023, we also organized the Philosophy of Vaishnava Vedanta Conference at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Probably if you are from India, you know what it means to have a conference on Vaishnava Vedanta at JNU. JNU is the hub of secularism in India. So by Krishna's grace and devotees arrangement, we could manage that. And in sequel to that, we also organized another national level workshop funded by Indian Council of Philosophical Research and JNU. This ICPR is the apex body for philosophical research. It monitors all kinds of philosophical research in India. So any details you want, you can go through this website. So I will not go into the details. All dignitaries, all experts on Sankhya system, classical and modern, whatever Sankhya system has been developed over the years. We could invite many scholars, traditional and academicians both. And in the past, we also organized several international events on environmental awareness, mostly led by Professor Ramesh Goyal at Utah University. So we organized two such events in 2021 and 2022. It was a good success for us. And Jigyasa is one of our flagship events. Every year we try to organize it. Since 2020, we have organized 3 such events. And in the very inaugural event, we could invite the Minister of Education, Government of India, Ramesh Pokhriyalji, and also several directors of different IITs to be the guests. And in follow-up to that, we also organized Jigyasa 21, where we could invite many dignitaries like Ed Kelly and Professor Sudhir Shah, who investigated that monk who fasted for years. So, and many others. So, without going into the details of our outreach activities, today I thought of spending more time on our research activities. And soon we are also starting a podcast series. I think some of you might have received invitation from us. So, the research activities, it's mostly the science part. It's dealing with how we can form a theory based on Bhagavatam's response to mind-body dualism. So we are not advocating mind-body dualism, nor even monism. So our philosophy is Achintya Bheda Ved. So so the mind is superior, and then body is built out of the mental state. So we need to construct a hierarchical structure of abstractions. I will not go into the technical details, just for mentioning I'm doing it. So the primary aspects that our model that we are trying to develop is, I can summarize in 4 ways. We are trying to address the intrinsicality issue, the semantic entanglement, how, for example, in 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Hansa Avatar's prayers, we get to hear how mind and sense objects are entangled. So that understanding of entanglement is, we call it semantic entanglement. And also we need to introduce the idea of non-local interaction. And at the end, we need to describe cognitive agents, because everything is conscious. The consciousness is the fundamental paradigm on which everything else should build upon. So thus, instead of dead material elements, we need to form a theory of cognitive elements or cognitive agents. So in that attempt to appreciate what intrinsicality is and what part and whole relation is, so I made a venture into study of collider observations, where I suggested a model. Instead of looking at individual hits at the detector, if you study the total hits together as a whole, collective whole, do you infer something? So in sequel to that, I got few papers. So of course it's not directly related to mind-body problem, but it paves the way for study of part and whole. Along those lines, also we studied the meditative states, studying the whole brain signal together. So yeah, some of the papers that came out of that. And recently I'm very much into the understanding of semantic entanglement. We know quantum entanglement, it gives us a very strange behavior that in the subatomic level, when things are entangled, means they have a shared existence. You cannot describe them independent of one another. Just like in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we get to hear that mind and sense objects, they need to be described together. You cannot describe independent of one another. Anyonya, as the description of the verse says. So along those lines, we want to develop a theory of semantic entanglement where cognitive agents are entangled. So yeah, unless you have some questions, I'll not go into the details. So recently, we have been successful in developing a classical model of flocking, nonlinear dynamics model of flocking, how the birds perceive each other and flock to a greater distance, form different patterns. So we could derive, first of all, we produced a nonlinear dynamics model based on the idea of Ricci curvature that is usually studied in general relativity. And then on top of that, we also developed a model where we successfully derived the nonlinear dynamics equation, considering the idea of semantic entanglement. So what is semantic entanglement here is, for example, here is a bird which is flocking ahead. It sees, for example, 3 birds. So the identity of this bird is described by the entangled state of these birds. So from this consideration, we could derive the famous Wicksec model, usually considered in flocking of birds. So along those lines, we also had few publications at the conference accepted at NBCC, differentiating causality and correlation from different AI models based on the idea of Sankhya, and also the hierarchy of abstractions and causality, how it should be based on the idea of Bhagavatam. And recently, we have been into a very interesting project where people are blindfolded, children and adults both. So some of them, by touching, they can identify the objects in front of them, and some of them, even without touching also, they can identify the objects in front of them. So we studied around 10 or 11 such subjects, and invariably we found that, so the perception that's happening in normal vision means without being blindfolded, and those who are blindfolded, it's almost similar. So it shows that we really don't need this physical apparatus of eyeball. So there is a very different non-local mechanism that is happening where the mind is entangled with the objects of perception. So we are trying to develop models based on that. So here you can see 2 cases. The first one is normal vision. The second one is non-visual visual perception. So the occipital lobes are activated in both cases, and only here you see that the activation is little delayed compared to the normal vision, but otherwise the activation patterns at the source level, so they are almost similar. So that suggests that there is more fundamental to than the current understanding of perception. Akhandadeep Prabhu describes visual sparseness in his Atma Paradigm series so wonderfully. So certainly we need to develop a model that's based on non-local behavior of these cognitive agents. And some of our ongoing studies maybe Prem Kishore Prabhu is not so much active into now these things because of health issues. But in collaboration with BIHS and IMIX, there was some venture into reincarnation studies. So we are also into study of different meditative states. So our Mahamantra tradition is active meditation. You really put a lot of energy to chant. I mean, it's active process. But there are some other processes like Vipassana and others, very passive meditative states. So we are trying to find biomarkers of that. And recently we studied the meditative state as random Markovian random walks, and we could see very characteristic signatures of different meditative states. So it's still in the study pipeline. So one of our devotees, Durgesh too, so he studied Mahamantra in 360-degree virtual reality environment, and he could see a very good mental health improvement of the subjects. So this is a scene of botanical garden in Mandi on the top of the hill, very scenic place. So we recorded 360-degree video there and made a VR system. And recently one of our team members, Professor Suresh Valla at IIT Delhi, Shrutakirti Prabhu, so he published a paper on sustainable living using cow dungs, how we can give up really the concrete structure that is polluting our Mother Earth. So how cow dungs can be a savior. So, and our team member Durgesh Prabhu is also studying 3 modes of nature from Bhagavad Gita perspective by studying behavioral patterns from textual video and image data extracted from social media, and trying to see how these patterns corroborate with the models in Bhagavad Gita, the 3 modes of nature. And there are a few other works, I'll not go into the details. And on the philosophical side, we have a very active team. 3 of our members, Dr. Rasmi Mishra, Mr. Anshul Agrawal, Dr. Saswati Bardoloi. So they are very much into study of our Gaudiya Vaishnava traditions. So Anshul Agrawal is trying to bring out how philosophy of science could benefit from Jiva Goswami's Sat Sandarbha, and other 2 ladies, Dr. Rasmi Mishra and Dr. Saswati Bardoloi, they are into usual Gaudiya Vaishnava theology. So they are some of their presentations in different forums. And recently we brought out few books. Some of them are proceedings from our conferences. For example, Jigyasa 2022, it was on science and philosophy in Indian knowledge system. In this event, Ministry of Education was one of our co-hosts. And recently a team of our volunteers, they compiled a book around 150 pages, What is Life? Exploration from Scientific and Spiritual Traditions. And this was a mammoth success for us. We could invite scholars from practically all 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. They assembled at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and we could compile 1100 page, more than 1100 page documentation on Vaishnava Vedanta from different perspectives. And we had earlier a few compilations, Science and Philosophy in Indian Knowledge System, Faith and Reason on Trial. And recently, Ministry of Education listed 3 of our courses on their website. And if you're interested, you can go onto this link, iksindia.org, courses offered by ikscenters.php. And there you will find detailed syllabus. And if some of you are interested to join any of these courses, the next batch is starting very soon. So you can be in touch with us. So yeah, so I'll not go into further details. I think it's already 7:50. So these are our contact addresses, and if you're interested to be in touch with us either for research or any outreach activities or compilation any books or courses, so feel free to be in touch with us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Jyoti Rajan Prabhu. This is taking us through an amazing kind of summary of the work that you and your fellows are doing in India. And we certainly hope that many who are listening to this today and also later on to the recordings will make contact and see how they can get involved. These are some very important papers, studies, research projects, and publications that you're working on. Thank you very, very much. Now, we move to Michael Cremo, who is also known as Judah Karmadas. He may be well known to you. He has been a devotee working on behalf of the Bhaktivedanta Institute for many decades. He's obviously an author of very important books, Forbidden Archaeology and Human Devolution. He presents at archaeology conferences all over the world. And he's also a member and even the convener and chairman of the meetings of the Exhibits Committee of the Museum of Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium. So we welcome him, and he is going to give us a little presentation on the Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium. You're on.
Okay, now can I be heard?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, I'll share a screen. And while I'm doing that, I'd like to say I really appreciated Nari Devi's talk. I'm kind of a stage 1, stage 2, and happy to see stage 3 type of person. Okay, do you see the presentation? Can you all see the presentation?
Yes, it's clear, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So today I want to say something about the Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium as a heritage project. And this is based on a paper that I presented at the World Archaeological Congress meeting in 2022 at Prague in the Czech Republic. So generally, archaeology deals with the past. Archaeologists collect artifacts and identify structures from the past, and this becomes part of heritage. Many archaeologists today are very much connected with heritage management. And in that sense, their perspective is directed towards the future, what we're going to pass on from our generation to future generations. And heritage exists in both tangible and intangible forms. Tangible form would be, for example, stone monuments. Intangible heritage would be ideas about cosmology. So we can take the Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium as a case study in transmitting and indigenous traditions and tangible cultural heritage to the future. And the tradition we're speaking about is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. The main personality connected with that tradition is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in 1486 in Mayapur, West Bengal. And the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition very much stresses the importance of studying the Bhagavat Purana or Srimad Bhagavatam, which itself begins with a meeting of sages in the Naimisharanya forest who are discussing what aspects of their Vedic heritage were most important to pass on to coming generations in the Kali Yuga, which they could see would be a time of troubles and disturbances. So they decided that among the ideas that should be passed on were ideas about cosmology. Now, this tradition was for a long time the property of Gaudiya Vaishnavas in India. But beginning in 1965, this cultural tradition, this knowledge was globalized on a wide scale by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada through his International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And part of his globalizing project for the Vedic cosmology was the idea of constructing in Mayapur the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. And he conceived it as providing a model depicting the planetary systems as described in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But he also contemplated that there would be museum-like exhibits explaining different aspects of the Vedic cosmology. So that is the mission of the Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium. It will occupy the west wing of the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. You see there on the left that there will be 4 floors of exhibits, which will be opened in various stages, beginning with the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors, and then the 4th floor and the ground floor. The ground floor is not really suitable for exhibits, so it will be used for support facilities and educational facilities, meeting rooms, reading rooms, and so on. Now, in the museum exhibits themselves on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors, the idea will be to answer certain fundamental questions that arise when people contemplate the cosmos. The first being, who am I in this cosmos? If we don't have a proper understanding of who we are, we can't act in our own best self-interest. If we don't know the proper identity of others, we can't really act in their own interest. We should also understand, where am I in the cosmos? And finally, where should I be going? So in order to answer these questions, it's necessary to examine questions of how we acquire knowledge. In the Vedic epistemology, there are different kinds of evidence. The sense evidence, the conclusions arrived at by inferences, logical inferences from sense evidence. And finally, the Shabda Pramana, evidence from trusted, reliable sources in the form of sound vibration, which is recorded in the Vedic literature, including the Puranas, the cosmological writings. So there'll be exhibits on that. Now, the question of who am I, we want to communicate the idea that we are not simply machines made of molecules, that there are other aspects to our identity as conscious, individual, personal beings. These are summarized in the Vedanta as Aham Brahmasmi. I am an eternally existing, individual, personal, conscious self. And that self is now connected with a material body existing in gross and subtle forms. And we want to communicate the idea that this embodiment that we currently have is not the whole story, that the soul journeys through different types of bodies in a process of spiritual evolution. we want to provide exhibits where using the latest technologies that will allow people to gain some insight and experience of what it's like to exist in different kinds of bodies in this process of the evolution of the soul through different species. One advantage of understanding the spiritual nature of the self is that it can help us arise above the conflicts that result from superficial identification with the gross and subtle material bodies, for example, in the form of nationalism or racism or different self-concepts that don't really reflect the true idea. And this also allows one to perceive not only the oneness of all the conscious selves in human forms, but in every form of life. So it engenders an outlook that is conducive to world peace and understanding and environmental harmony. So then the question arises, well, where are we in the cosmos? We learned that the material cosmos is only a small part of a larger cosmos that includes the spiritual worlds. And we learned that our universe is one of many that emanate from Mahavishnu, and this has some parallels in the modern concept of the multiverse. So our universe is something like a virtual reality system that is meant to that is meant for souls who aren't yet qualified to exist on the spiritual level of reality, where their features of eternality, knowledge, and bliss can be fully expressed. They can't be fully expressed on our current level of reality. So we want to have exhibits based on scientific principles and Vedic philosophy that communicate these ideas to a wide audience. So the material cosmos is just part of the whole picture, but it's important to recognize that it is also the energy of God. It's an actual form of God, the universal form. And if we appreciate that, it'll give a different concept of civilization. Our main purpose is not to dominate, control, and exploit the resources of material nature to the maximum extent. Rather, our purpose is to satisfy our material needs in the most simple, natural, and efficient way possible, while putting most of our human energy into the elevation of consciousness and qualifying ourselves to exist on the level where all of the features of our conscious individual self can be fully expressed in relationship to the supreme conscious self, Krishna. And for that purpose, in the central dome of the Temple of Vedic Planetarium will be a chandelier model of the Vedic planetary systems, going all the way through the different material levels of the cosmos to the spiritual levels and the ultimate spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan. So actually the fourth floor or fourth level of the Temple of Vedic Planetarium will be dedicated to depicting the position of liberated souls in the spiritual sky. There's a big dome up there which lends itself to either a 360-degree dome theater or other types of digital display that will give people a wow experience of what awaits them if they make the journey all the way up to go there. So that's what we ultimately want to communicate to people. The Temple of Vedic Planetarium has a working agreement with the Bhaktivedanta Institute of Higher Studies, which has connections with other Bhaktivedanta Institute groups and related groups like ISS throughout the world. And we want to make sure that our presentation is not only faithful to our Vedic Gaudiya Vaishnava sources, but is also scientifically accurate. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much yourself, Deirdre Carver. That was an excellent summary of the Science Museum. I think you explained its purposes, its outlook, its value, and many of the details that we have. There is one question. I don't know if you'd like to take it. We have a moment to do it. It says, when we assert that the material cosmos constitutes only a fraction of the entire cosmos, we face the challenge of conceptualizing this notion, especially since the term fractional inherently pertains to the space-time continuum. This implies that space comparisons are relative within the material cosmos. Therefore, what is the context for such a comparison?
The context is that whatever we perceive on this level of reality is a reflection of a spiritual reality, but it's a perverted reflection. The time factor in the material cosmos has a destructive aspect to it. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Kalosmi Lokachaya Krit, time I am, destroyer of the worlds. This indicates that time operating within the material cosmos is of the nature of, it has a directionality to it, and it's a problem that confronts scientists trying to understand how the material cosmos functions. There seems to be a directionality of time that is related to increasing entropy. In other words, increasing disorganization. So that factor is there. That aspect of time is not present in the spiritual dimension. There is an order. There are pastimes. Things do happen in a certain sequence, but that destructive aspect of the time factor is absent. In terms of spatial representation, that is what we experience in this world is there is a space in which the activities of the time factor can be expressed, which are pushing things in a certain direction. But that type of spatial arrangement is not there in the spiritual world. Of course, this I don't claim myself to have the answer to every question. One concept that we have for the Temple of Vedic Planetarium Science Museum is it will incorporate an ongoing, it will feature ongoing research on different philosophical and scientific questions related to the Vedic cosmology. So I can say myself that I haven't fully thought through all the aspects of the differences or similarities between spatial representation in the material cosmos as it relates to the spiritual aspect of the cosmos, which is different in many ways.
Okay, thank you very much, Vikram. There is another question: what scientific framework has been used to communicate to the mass audience about the several universes originate? How many universes originate from the force of Mahavishnu? That will be something that I think both Giridhari, Laura, and Doug gave some information on at the beginning. So look forward to seeing what they present on that. But I wanted to move forward now. This still continues the theme of the Science Museum. I just knocked out my the page that I was reading from. Sorry, give me a moment. Well, basically, we want to continue with the Science Museum and Vedic Planetarium, and particularly to hear a bit more about the ideas that are being developed for the chandelier at the center of the main dome in the TOVP. That at the moment isn't a direct responsibility of the BIHS in its work with the Science Museum, but we are working more closely with the team that is involved with that. And that's who I'd like to invite at this moment. There's Prema Gauranga and Pavaneshwar. Both of them have been brahmacharis at the Radha Gopinath Mandir in Mumbai, and are key members of the BIHS in Mumbai. So working with us. So they've got half an hour to present, and I don't know how they would like to present, share that time between each other.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Akantati Prabhu, am I audible?
Okay. Yes, we have Prem Gauranga.
Yeah, so my screen is visible, Prabhu?
It is.
Okay, so thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and I would like to first express my gratitude to all the organizers of this BI school, especially His Grace Brahmatirth Prabhu, His Grace Akantati Prabhu, and Dr. Kunal. Parmeshwar Prabhu and myself will be speaking on the TOP chandelier model, and I will just give background in terms of the research problem that we are faced with, and Parmeshwar will deal with more of the animation aspect. So we'll begin with where Siddhi Muni Prabhu left last week, when he was dealing with the growth barrier problem. Okay, so my slides. So it's not that the disagreements are only there, with modern science per se, but this phenomena is also seen over the last 1400 years, and is well documented that there have been terms of reconciliation between both the Puranic and the Siddhantic description of cosmology. So initially, as it was the Siddhantas, especially the people who follow the standard accommodation, they were taking Puranic cosmology a bit more secondary compared to what the Siddhanta said, especially because Siddhantic cosmology was something which was practically verified. But then, after them in around 15th century comes the Partapura school and many more to follow them, where the Puranic doctrine held the upper hand. And then we have, the other scholars who use different combinations of these techniques, explaining how there are different planes of realities. One is meant for practical mundane affairs. One has more of strategical aims. Some adopted exegetical strategies. And, they actually try to adjust and revise doctrine so that they conform to each other. But what is surprising, and this is a question actually posed by Christopher Monsky in one of his papers, where he says, why do the authors of the Siddhantas need to seek intellectual accommodation with the Purans at all? If the science was practically useful, would that not be enough to guarantee the creation of a niche within the ecosphere of canonical literature? And it's exactly these types of questions that we are trying to tackle. And for that matter, what was interesting, and we studied many of these texts, not in detail, but at least in terms of their main content. Surprisingly, Shukdev Goswami is using more than 150 numericals to describe the whole cosmic aspect in the 5th canto. And none of them actually use mathematics as a common language to draw some parallels of how and where they are similar and where they are different. Why this was not done, I'm not very sure. But anyhow, we took this opportunity of tackling the problem, taking mathematics as the common language, which can actually resolve this apparent disagreements to quite a great extent. And for that, basically, we have taken two approaches. So though Pavneshwar Prabhu has worked quite on Bhagavad cosmology and he has also produced some books on it, but I will be dealing with the mathematical exposition of Bhagavad cosmology, and Pavneshwar Prabhu is actually focusing on the Siddhanta aspect, so that both are taken care when we are going to present this in the TOP chandelier in terms of the research problem. So what I did was I have taken these 12 commentators from practically all the Sampradayas and their commentaries, of course, taking Prabhupada's commentary as the primary commentary, and try to actually decipher mathematically what all this leads to. It is very interesting, in the letter, the famous quote and famous letter of Macaulay to the British Parliament regarding Indian education system, he exactly cites these passages from the Bhagavad Puran, or rather from the Puranic literature, which actually talk about all these different oceans of yogurt, ghee, and he says this is really imaginative. So how interestingly, if you read this discourse of Priyavrat Maharaj actually going around Mount Meru on the Bhumantal with his chariot, he actually is tracing the path of the sun in the opposite direction. And this actually lends the first clue. If he's tracing the path of the sun, that means he should know the orbit of the sun. So the first question that we ask ourselves, does the Bhagavad actually give the orbit of the sun mathematically? And this is the first question that we try to tackle. And for that matter, actually, we have to go back to the 3rd canto, which talks about the time units. And after tackling what the time units exactly are and the concept of yojanas, we move on to this problem. So this is just a set of results to give a comparison of what the values are. These are about 12 data points that we have taken and calculate the values from Srimad Bhagavatam and then the current accepted value in relation to the non-fixed cycles. This is for the perihelion, aphelion of the sun, the apparent axial tilt of the earth, the angle of the ecliptic, century of the sun and the earth orbit, width of the zodiac belt, declination of the north pole of rotation, that is for the sun, diameter of the earth, declination of the pole star, and the ecliptic bisecting the equator. So we can see that the result is quite close by. And I'm not going to the technical details of how these have been derived, but this is what we are trying to do actually, compare some data points that are deduced from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I can assure you that most of it is from Srila Prabhupada's commentary. I'm just using the Acharya's commentaries as a backup, because one of the interesting feedbacks that I get from reviewers is, why are you quoting a 21st century commentator? How do we, trust what his intentions are? Quite an unacademic type of review, but that's what the academia is currently. So most of it actually comes from Prabhupada's purports, but the Acharya's commentaries are used as backup there. And then, of course, we take the comparison of different planetary parameters vis-a-vis Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in terms of their aphelion and perihelion, their apogee and perigee. So this is, how we actually are taking about 37 parameters that are deduced from Srimad Bhagavatam, comparing that vis-a-vis to what the modern scientists have to say. So now the whole idea is to give, to prove the point that the Bhagavad Puran provides a precise, empirical, verifiable description of astronomical phenomena in a geocentric framework, and not just a symbolic, allegorical, and religious description. It is able to mathematically, that's the whole emphasis, because previously it's usually the general line of mainstream Shastric argument that they use in terms of pramanas and different ways of gaining knowledge, and even Mimamsa to some extent to prove their point. But this is using mathematics that we are, trying to resolve the apparent differences between what the Puranas have to say and what the Siddhantas have to say. You can mathematically prove how the Bhagavad is actually talking about a spherical Earth, not a flat Earth, and prove mathematically how the prime meridian, both in the Siddhantas and in the Puranas, is actually passing through Jain. And of course, then what Prabhupada said about to prove the causes of day and night, seasons and eclipses, and all that parameters. So of course, it's not really a question of scientific outreach, but definitely the ramifications for the devotees are also quite interesting in the sense that they can appreciate the Bhagavad Purana's easy but eloquent and precise rendition of astronomical observations. Now, I say easy because, in one sense, it's an open secret. If you read Prabhupada's purports, they make it all the more simpler. Now, what Shukdev Goswami is doing is actually not using technical terms. He's just using simple comparative models to make people understand, because the Purana is for the general public. It's not like the Siddhantic text with detailed algorithms and technical terms. In that sense, it is easy, but it's eloquent and it's precise. Especially Shukdev Goswami, the way he weaves across the different coordinate systems to describe in the shortest possible time. It also gives you an idea how these Shastras actually are an open secret. It is there, but it's still so much, hidden. Of course, for me, what has been really amazing in terms of studying this is Prabhupada's commentary in terms of how he gives the synonyms, the translations, and purports, how actually he's using all these three to accommodate as much as informations that the different acharyas are giving. So, in synonyms, he uses a certain term, but in translation, it is different. And in the purport, he explains it a different way. Actually, what he's doing is trying to give all possible perspective in the shortest possible way. And of course, the commentaries of the acharyas and the appreciation for Mahaprabhu's various pastimes, actually. Especially one of the pastimes that strikes me is when he says in terms of how Vallabhacharya is not following Sridhar Swami. And now it's not following Sridhar Swami in the sense, not that, Vallabhacharya is saying something wrong, but he's just taking some other secondary meaning. But that also is quite useful. And of course, many other pastimes of Mahaprabhu's that I'm not going into there.
Prem Gauranga,
yes.
The two of you have this
Yes,
a lot of time has
yes,
passed.
yes,
I
yes,
just wondered
yes.
if you
So
wanted to
yeah.
share with Bhavnesh
Yeah,
a
1
very
minute more. Yeah, 1 minute more and I'm done. So basically, this was the academic research part. And in terms of the chandelier, basically, we are working with the project consultants, Cushman and Wakefield. So basically, we have to still figure out, we are, working on all the possibilities to have it as a complete physical structure or holographic projection or a hybrid. And of course, this is the survey and partnership overtake. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
That was really good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Rory.
very much. Yeah.
And now we pass on to Bhavnesh.
Yeah, I think I'm audible to all of you. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. And also thank you for allowing us to be part of the entire summer school. So taking forward from what Prem Gorampuru has stated, so this is one of the famous letter which actually inspired us years back. As a result of that, we are making a little tiny effort to study and understand cosmology. So basically, Srila Prabhupada wanted this, in addition to displaying the entire universe, these four things: the passing of day and night, the change in the phase of the moon, and the passing of seasons and eclipses. So here we have been seeing such kind of pictures that we are going to have all the spiritual and material universes depicting, starting from Shesha holding the Bhumandala all the way up to Goloka Vrindavan, Lord Krishna engaging in the eternal pastimes. So right now, I'm not focusing on all the details. I'm primarily focusing on these four things, which is the important section of this entire chandelier model. As we study from Bhagavatam how Brahma, who appeared on top of the lotus, had divided the lotus into 14 divisions and created 14 planetary systems with many subdivisions. So among the 14, below the Bhumandala and the 7 lower planetary systems, and above Dhruvaloka, the 4 upper planetary systems, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka, are stationary. And the intermediate portion, wherein I showed in the yellow background, we have this Bhuvarloka and Swargaloka, which actually talks about all the luminaries that we see in the outer space every night, which are under constant motion. So this part of the universe is dynamic, and remaining rest of the universe is static. So now we'll focus on only this part. In this especially, how by the relative motion of the planets with respect to constellations and zodiac signs, how we are able to understand these four phenomena from Srimad Bhagavatam. Though Srimad Bhagavatam presents the general understanding of planetary motions, but that itself suffices for us to understand these four things. For details, exact details about how these things are happening, we may need to take help of Siddhantic texts. So generally, we may tend to hear outside people say that the Puranic texts and Siddhantic texts are contrary to each other, but we do not see any such contradictions. Instead, they are actually complementary to each other. By combining both, we will have the complete picture of the universe. So now let us try to examine one by one. With the help of some simple animation, I'm trying to present this. As you go to the top of the universe, when you look down, so how things are happening, we'll be trying to visualize. This is like we need to just kindly imagine yourself, you are somewhere here and looking downward, how things are happening. So that is what is being depicted in our pictures. So this is the entire Bhumandala consisting of 7 oceans, 7 dvipas surrounded by Lokaloka, Manasutara, Lokaloka, and other areas. The sun is said to be traveling in his chariot, which is located just above Manasutara mountain, by his daily motion around Mount Meru in the middle. We see how the entire Bhumandala experiences day and night. So one revolution of the sun is considered to be 1 day, which is 24 hours. And in the middle of this Bhumandala, we have Jambudvipa. In the middle of that Jambudvipa, a little on the southern side, we have Bharatakanda, which is our Earth globe. So for the Earth globe, the same motion of the sun, how it causes the day and night. Being it is spherical, in whichever side sun is there, that part of the Earth globe is brightened, other part is darker. This is as simple as we study in the school. So now the same thing in a simulation. So here Srimad Bhagavatam explains the constellation wheel, which is superimposed upon the zodiac wheel, which is indicated in the Bhagavatam as Kala Chakragata, consisting of 12 Rashis, is acting as the prime mover, and it is carrying all the stars that are there in the outer space as well as the Navagrahas along with it. As a result of that, we have the planetary motion as we try to understand in our astronomy. So this simple simulation shows the daily motion of sun, how sun is starting from the eastern direction with reference to Indian continent, and then as it is going around, how at any given point of time, half of the earth globe is bright and other half is dark. So this particular motion of the sun explains as how day and night is happening. So here you can see the front view of the same thing. So then, but though apparently in the previous simulation, the Kala Chakra and sun are traveling together, it may appear like that, but it is not so. Srimad Bhagavatam explained that as Kala Chakra consisting of 12 Rashis and 27 constellations, 27 nakshatras, as it is going ahead, we see that the sun and moon are slowly lagging behind. By the time Kala Chakra completes one revolution, the sun would complete about 359 degrees out of 360, and the moon would complete 347 degrees. So the moon is ideally lagging behind by 13 degrees approximately, and the sun is lagging behind by 1 degree. So as it continues further and further, when by the time Kala Chakra completes 360 rounds, the sun would have completed 359 rounds and moon would have completed 347 rounds. This is just to explain the principle, but it is not exactly 1 degree, it is slightly less than 1 degree. As a result of that, we have as sun completes as the Kala Chakra completes 366 rounds, sun will complete 365 rounds. That's how we have 365 days in a year. So to that precision, Srimad Bhagavatam gives an idea. Same way, we can Bhagavatam tells about how other planets are lying behind with respect to Kala Chakra. The sun, Venus and Mercury are lying behind by 1 degree, moon 13 degrees, Mars 2/3 degree, Jupiter 1/12 degree, Saturn 1/30th degree, and Rahu Ketu, they are actually going ahead of Kala Chakra by 1/18th degree. These are per day basis. So we can have here per month and per year, same thing can be extended further. So this simple simulation shows how all the planets on a daily motion, they are going along with Kala Chakra, but on everyday basis, they are slightly lagging behind with respect to Kala Chakra. If we observe only on daily basis how much they are lagging behind over a period of 1 month or 1 year, we can see them in the next picture, in the next continuation of the simulation. For a period of 30 days, how it happens? As sun is moving from Mesha to Vrishabha, the moon actually makes one complete round, which takes about 30 days to move from one new moon day to other new moon day. Such kind of phenomena continues further. So in this animation, we can see Mars is trying to catch up with sun because it is slower, and Jupiter is much slower, Saturn is much slower, and here we can see Rahu Ketu are actually going ahead of Kala Chakra in due course of time. So like that, Bhagavatam explains about the planetary motion with respect to Kala Chakra. So this zodiac wheel is actually in the background when we see sun starts moving from one Rashi to other Rashi. So then, seeing the same principle, how day after day, as the moon is lagging behind by 13 degrees with respect to Kala Chakra, or 12 degrees with respect to sun, because of the relative position of the moon with respect to sun, over a period of 1 month, we see the amount of the portion of the moon which is brightened by sun and which is visible to the people on the surface of the earth. So with respect to this circle, so whichever portion of the moon is inside this bigger circle is visible to the people on the earth. So whichever is outside, we can't see. Here, we can't see any bright portion of the moon. In a day or two, we see little bit bright portion. It continues further after 8 days off, and after 15 days, we see full bright portion of the moon, and then gradually reduces. So this is how it happens. Here we can see this. This is from the top how it look like. This is from the front how it look like. So on the first day, we could see little bit of the moon. And a day after, we could see little bigger moon. because of the relative position of the moon with respect to sun. And the day after we could see little bigger moon. So like that, over 8 days, half the moon becomes visible. Over 15 days, the full moon becomes visible. Another 7 days, the moon reduces to half. Another 7.5 days, the moon becomes again almost invisible. So this is how we can also understand, because of the relative motion, how the moon goes through the phases, different phases, new moon to full moon, and then reverse. And then the 23rd chapter of the 5th canto explains about the Kala Chakra, which is acting as a prime mover and the background. It is not actually completely flat. It is actually inclined. That inclination has been indicated while explaining the position of the 27 nakshatras with respect to the Shishimara system. So this entire Kala Chakra along with the Shishimara, since it is going in a circular fashion, as sun is moving from one Rashi to other Rashi, it gradually goes upward toward the north. And then another 6 months, it gradually comes downward. As a result of that, we have the sun going through the concept of Uttarayana, as it is going from Makara to Mithuna. And we also have Dakshinayana, as sun is traveling from Karaka to Dhanu. So this will help us explain the Uttarayana, Dakshinayana, and the change in seasons, etc. And Bhagavatam also says that, of course, other Puranas go into more details. As sun goes upward, because Dhruva is pulling towards him, the orbital radius becomes shortened. So that also helps us understand the perihelion and aphelion concept. So on an annual basis, this is the path of sun from January to April to July, then October and January. This is the general path of sun being indicated in the Bhagavatam by talking about the 3 distinct speeds of the sun. As a result of that, we can actually track the motion of the sun. So here, how this, with this inclined wheel, the sun goes in that particular orbit and makes its Uttarayana Dakshinayana motion, which we can understand from this simulation. So this is like a daily motion of the Kala Chakra along with the sun, moon, and all the other planets are there. And now we'll see on the monthly basis how it happens. So this is like a front view, but inclined time wheel, this one. So now we select for 1 month. In that 1 month, what happens? So in that 1 month, the moon is going around, but while going around, it is actually going upward and coming downward, again coming to the middle. And sun is gradually going upward in a month period. So if you select in a year, it gradually goes upward and comes downward. This is the Uttarayana Dakshinayana motion of the sun with respect to Kala Chakra. These are the 3 distinct speeds which are given in the 5th canto, 21st chapter, verse number 10, 12, and 19, which helps us understand the changes that are happening. And then 24th chapter goes into details about the eclipse. This is the whole past time. No, I'm not going into details. The Daivasura, they're coming together for a truce and then trying to extract the nectar. So during that, we have this Rahu coming in between sun and moon and drinking nectar. But Vishnu Purana says that along with Rahu, Ketu also there drinking nectar. So as a result of that, Ketu and Rahu became inimical to sun and moon, and they want to, they always look for an opportunity to kind of exercise their anger upon sun and moon. Though from the modern understanding, we see that the solar eclipse and lunar eclipse happens due to the alignment of sun, moon, and earth in the same line. So, but from Puranic understanding, especially from Bhagavatam, we also have the intervention of Rahu or Ketu, one of the two. So once in a while, they come in between, as their orbit is said to be inside the orbit of the moon. So they also come in between and they try to exercise their free will by obstructing the sun rays and moon rays coming to us and influence us by their own evil character. As a result of that, traditionally, culturally, we kind of abstain from many things, so etc. So here we can see a simple animation. Over every 6 months, 6 lunar months actually, about 155 days, there is a possibility of eclipse. So that is the time the sun, moon, Rahu, or Ketu, and earth, all the 4 come in the alignment. So which brings in the concept of eclipse happening this thing. First eclipse, if it happens by Rahu, the next eclipse will happen by Ketu. This is about solar eclipse. The previous one was with Rahu, and the next one is with Ketu. So like that, the next eclipse will be because of Rahu. Sometimes when there is additional lunar month, in 2 subsequent months, there could be 2 partial eclipses because of the improper alignment. Maybe half the portion of the moon or sun is covered. As a result of that, we have only half eclipse. So now in the next simulation, we can see the lunar eclipse. Just the solar eclipse is happening. In the lunar eclipse, the only difference is the moon goes on the other side, exactly opposite to that of sun. In solar eclipse, both sun and moon are on the same side. So which also again occurs after every 5 lunar months on every full moon day. So whenever that is occurring, we get to see that once due to Rahu and next time due to Ketu. So these are the basic details. Yeah, yes, sir, I'm done. These are the basic details which are there in the Bhagavatam, from which we can explain or we can understand and explain all these 4 phenomena. And based on these inputs, recently during Nityanand Trayadashi, Cushman Wakefield has installed a simulation, a kind of prototype unit, which will show all these basic movement of the planets. So as of now, this is the current state of activity that are happening in the DOP. As time progresses, more and more things will be revealed. So these are some of the points from my side. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. That was excellent. Very, very interesting analysis. Very, very helpful. There's one question which I think Prem Gurunga has elected to answer. Do we really conclude radius of sun's orbit as about 93 million miles from the Srimad Bhagavatam? He says.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, because
said,
the general concept, the general understanding is that they take the length of the axle that has been given exactly at the for the radius of the sun, but that's not the case because there's a concept of Rathanida, that is the chariot of the sun. So it's not equivalent to the axle length, but it's you have to minus the dimensions of the interiors of the Rathanida. That's how you get 93. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Okay, and now I am going to pass over to my co-host, Kumudvan Vrajesh, and ask him to take over this next session, which is involved with a little panel where we will look at the BI, its activities, and how you can all get involved. I don't see Kumud on just yet, but I could introduce His Grace Brahmatirtha Bob Cohen, who is going to make the first presentation on this. PT, are you ready to go ahead?
Maybe he only speaks in sign language now because his hand is there.
No, I'm here.
I think I'm going to go first. Bob, do you want to join through a different machine, or are you all right?
Yeah, I'm going to log into a different machine now. Okay, why don't you begin? Kunal, you begin.
I just wanted to begin with a short presentation. And let me just segue into the sort of panel and general Q&A. So just to maybe give everyone a summary of what happened throughout this summer school. This is going to be a presentation which I'm just going to make sure that everyone can see the screen and hear me loud and clear. Akhandadi, do you want to give me a hands up?
Yes, it's like we can hear you. We see your slides. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. So this is going to be some bit of presentation as well as sort of a panel, and we'll be taking general Q&A. So please, if there are any questions from this entire summer school that you had, any burning questions, what is the BIHS? What are the resources involved? The opportunities getting involved? This is what this session is about. If you have any question on any of these topics that were covered as part of this summer school, now is the time to ask. Okay, so hit that Q&A button and post your question right away. But the presenters and panelists for this session, which is going to last about 45 minutes, are Bob Cohen, Akhanditi Das, H.D. Goswami, and myself, Kunal Mule. All right, so it has been a very eventful summer school for me, and I would like to thank all the participants to begin with that were part of this wonderful series marking the 50th anniversary of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Let me get started right away with affiliates and collaborators. We would, of course, like to thank all of these members and collaborators. This was organized by the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies, which is basically a science and philosophy institution. We want to make sure that we bring some unique insights into our understanding of life, understanding of ourselves as conscious beings. And we want to make sure that we are heard loud and clear. And we want to reach out to the entire world. There is the Institute of Science and Spirituality, who is an affiliate. And we've heard from Dr. Jyoti Ranjan Buria earlier today that they are involved in research, education, and outreach. Prabhupada Research Institute for Integrative Medicine is another affiliate. And you heard from Dr. Venugopal Demerla earlier in the summer school that how they are contributing to some interesting understanding of Mahamantra through research, how it affects the mind, how it affects consciousness, and so on. There's a Science and Philosophy Initiative headed by Akhanditi Das, which is based in the UK. And that is another science and philosophy endeavor to understand consciousness. And basically through research and outreach, we have to reach the masses and ourselves understand this whole concept of who we are and what are our destinations. So Bhaktivedanta Hospital and Research Institute is a collaborator. You heard from Dr. Komal Dalal earlier. I'll be getting a little bit into that in my next slide. There is also the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies collaborates with the International Consciousness Research Laboratories, also known as Pear Research, Princeton Pear Research in its olden days, which are heavily into research on the mind and how it can affect matter. Another collaborator is the Institute of Technology at Mandi, and also the Institute for Mind, Intelligence, and Consciousness Studies, which I am grateful to be heading, actually. So I collaborate very closely with the BIHS folks here. Okay, so the BIHS, again, gets together every year, every couple of years with these grand conferences. And if you haven't had a chance to be a part of them, please, I would request you to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful gathering, which is generally, I mean, some of the examples you can see here. In 2019, there was this Consciousness and Science Conference, which I was a part of, Mind-Brain Interface Conference, which in fact I was leading in 2021. We got together as scientists and philosophers across the world. International and rigorous are basically two keywords that define these conferences. And there was the Cosmology Conference in 2023, and you can see the wide variety of experts that are involved in these kinds of conferences. Okay, so there was also the IMEX BIHS IIT Mandi conference held in December 2023, where the overarching goal was leveraging Eastern and current scientific knowledge systems to develop a comprehensive understanding of mind, intelligence, consciousness, matter, and reality. And you can see various academics from science, philosophy, ranging from medical doctors. You can also see very renowned folks like Stuart Hameroff involved in some of these conferences. So the themes that we generally cover are consciousness, spiritual world, God, even subtle body, subtle matter, metaphysics of physical world, mind-body interface. And an important part, which I will come towards the end actually, is education and outreach. Okay, so another flavor of conferences, of course, there was a BIHS participation in a recent, one of the world's renowned conferences, in fact, on consciousness, which is the Science of Consciousness held at the University of Arizona. There was a special session where the BIHS contributed, top-down consciousness and real-world applications. There were a few speakers involved here that you can see. Again, this is just a flavor of what kind of things are being carried out, cutting-edge research, as well as all these education and outreach events that are held at the BIHS. So just getting into the BI network a little bit, there is a whole network of scientists and engineers involved with physics, astronomy, biology. I don't need to name all the different disciplines, computer science and artificial intelligence. So if you fall under one of these categories trained as an academic, please do get in touch with the BIHS. The folks, we will be very happy to really engage with you, and maybe we can work together as collaborators. Philosophers and theologians, of course, medical doctors, historians and archaeologists, and also educators, intellectuals, all of them contributing in many different ways. So there is, don't feel left behind. Actually connect with the network as soon as possible. And the whole idea is we work together as a group in making really ambitious and really good science, philosophy, medicine, or transforming all these fields with the rich Eastern knowledge there is, right, that we have access to. Okay, some bit of research that has come about and has been showcased at the summer school. I want to mention at the very beginning, there was a very wonderful talk given by Lakshmidhar Behra, who is the director of IIT Mandi, showcasing his Indian Knowledge Systems and Mental Health Applications division that has been newly formulated. The theme there is primarily mind, brain, and consciousness. There is a whole wide variety of research topics involved here on consciousness studies, meditation, yoga, performing arts, Ayurveda, a whole lot of opportunity, interdisciplinary, scientific, philosophical approach that you can get plugged into. There was another very nice talk from the Bhaktivedanta Hospital folks on Mahamantra research, spiritual care. We also had Dr. Venugopal Damarla and Uma Pallavi presenting on spiritual intelligence and Mahamantra research. Again, we see an increasing number of people around the world who are getting interested into Mahamantra meditation research. So if you're trained in any of the involved research activities or research kind of tools, then please do get connected again with all of these different avenues. Of course, a very important aspect of the Science and Philosophy Initiative is, of course, looking deeper into the Shastras, looking deeper into philosophy itself, philosophy of knowledge. Very wonderful talk given by Dr. Howard Resnick, H.D. Goswami here, of course, is how can we really combine philosophy and science together to come up with a very holistic understanding of our existence, right, of the world around us, and so on. Vedic archaeology and history are not left behind. They are very much part of the BIHS. We had very good talks from Michael Primo and Rita Yene here. The TOBP, Chandelier Model, and Science Museum that are coming up in this world's biggest temple in Mayapur were covered earlier today. Astronomy and Vedic cosmology are also important aspects of research that is going on at the BIHS. And last but not the least, natural and artificial intelligence and model of the mind that I want to highlight. Very good talks. Actually, there is one more that I wanted to highlight. Of course, this is a very, very important topic that the BIHS is a collaborator on. And this is reincarnation and extraordinary abilities research. There are various components to this research. Consolidating Eastern perspectives on reincarnation, this really requires deeper investigations and focused understanding of the Eastern philosophies to try and come up with really unique understanding of the subtle body. What is there beyond the physical? How is that able to hold information? And how does that translate into its connections with the physical, with biology, and so on? And ultimately, how is it connected with the conscious being, ourselves as the Jiva and Atma? There is another neuroscience, cognitive science component to this. There is a biology component. There is a physiology and psychology component. There's a medical component through past life regression, and of course, theory building. All of these different variety of areas that, of course, all of our participants can contribute to, and of course, get engaged in. Education, I wanted to cover this. I have just one slide, but I'm not going to do justice at all by just having one slide here. There's a lot going on. I just want to highlight a few things going on at IIT Mandi. A couple of these courses that are being taken actually by hundreds of students as compulsory courses at IIT Mandi, bachelors of engineering and other disciplines, are taking Indian knowledge systems and consciousness studies, cognitive psychology, and the Indian thought system, Bhagavad Gita, Introduction to Consciousness and Holistic Well-being. This is a course that, in fact, I myself have developed, and Reincarnation. This is a course that is coming soon. So all these wonderful courses being defined at real universities, really cutting edge work here. There are other aspects I won't get into in detail, but applications of subtle body like the phantom limb problem, medical doctors, and many others engaged in various disciplines can get involved with this kind of work here. Research as well as education, remote viewing. This falls under the category of extraordinary perceptual abilities. There's also meditation and well-being, a lot to get involved with. I don't want to leave behind outreach at universities, various universities across the US that the BIHS is reaching out to. There is also UK SPI, Science and Philosophy Initiative, that are connected with leading universities up there in UK as well as Europe, and the ISS contributing heavily to reaching out to these Indian universities and so on. So highlighting just a few outreach avenues. So if any of you in the participants, or if you are friends with anyone, acquainted with anyone who is involved with research and is interested in being part of this global endeavor, then please do reach out. Resources, how can you get plugged in to the various resources? Firstly, starting with books. We covered in the summer school many of these resources, and starting from Vedic cosmography, does Shabda make Pratyaksha invalid? Again, Vedic sort of this astronomy and so on, Krishna and the Quark. Some of these books we've highlighted in the earlier talks. There's also a Science and Philosophy Initiative that is preparing some books on reframing reality and the Atma paradigm, specifically related to how philosophy and science can contribute to the global discussion on what is consciousness, who are we, and so on. I want to highlight, this is sort of a kind of a selfish plug here. From the IMIC side, this is the Institute of Mind, Intelligence, and Consciousness Studies. We have two books upcoming, The Concepts of Subtle Body and Consciousness in Eastern Knowledge, and one that we've already is out there is Mind-Brain Interface. This has various interesting topics that talks about how we can really understand the unique role of the mind, which may be independent of the brain, workings of the brain, right? There are several handouts that are already being prepared as part of outreach endeavors. Globally speaking, of course, the left one is prepared by the Science and Philosophy Initiative. And the right, you can see a couple of different handouts. And in fact, one of them is a publication in a reputable journal that is prepared by the Prabhupada Research Institute for Integrative Medicine. There are presentations and lectures. So please be acquainted with all of these if you're, again, an intellectual that is waiting to connect with these kinds of resources, or outreach person who is looking for resources to disseminate, right? So this is just the Atma paradigm that I'd like to highlight, which is a dedicated YouTube channel headed by Akhandadi Das. And there are Richard Thompson archives, which contains various videos by Richard Thompson, who was one of the initial members of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. There are also these various other resources like scientific papers and BTG essays and so on. So please do connect. There are various more resources that are on the way, which we will basically all the participants and everyone involved here connected with the BIHS, we will disseminate those as soon as possible. So do reach out to us if you're looking for any specific kinds of resources, and relevant experts at the BIHS will connect you to the right kind of resources. There's also, especially for students and maybe generally the intellectuals that are interested or experts with computer coding and involved with developing models of sorts. There are projects and hackathons that have been organized in the past and some that have been planned. In this slide, we're just showing a few examples that actually students came up with on developing models of the mind based on Eastern understanding as well as the scientific understanding of the mind, psychological understanding of the mind, and so on. So various opportunities. There's no dearth of how you can get involved with all of these. Okay, so that is all that I had. I'm going to pass on the baton to Bob Cohen. And if you want to speak, you just let me know which slide should be presented. Okay. Okay, so just a minute. A bit of technical interlude here because we need to get from Tirthadas on the panelist. So take just a few seconds. Okay. We have Bob here. And yes, please go for it.
Okay, first I want to thank you, my friend Kunal, for organizing this first attempt at our summer school. As in any endeavor, there'll be some shortcomings, which ultimately become the responsibility of the BI. So we want to hear your feedback. What worked for you, what didn't work, what was boring, what was interesting, what you'd like more of. Please write us and I'll explain to you how to do that in a moment. And I'll speak briefly. This is our headquarters in Gainesville, donated, I'm pleased to say, by Hriday Nanaraj's Family Trust. It used to be the home for the president of the University of Florida. And when he retired, he was recruited by Nehru to go to India and get the educational system going. IIT, all these institutions needed to be developed or revived. And of course, Nehru wanted to do it at that point without the British. So next slide, please. Back one. You saw some of this before. At the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies, we have institutes we're affiliated with. Kunal had mentioned the International Conscious Research Lab. For those of you who are familiar with the PAIR project, that's a successor organization when they moved off campus from Princeton. Fascinating group that for 30 years studied the interaction of mind and machines. I'm pleased to say I'm also on the board of directors of the organization, and we just finished a joint conference with them. And we work with all these other organizations. We've attended or produced about 16 conferences, 47 associates. It's an old number. Every week, 3-4 people write me and say, what can I do to be involved in the BI? I urge you to do the same. Next slide, please. You've seen, of course, we're doing the summer school now. There's how to contact me, or you can write directly to the BI. Either way works. You have our website. Our website is undergoing a revision now, which I'd like to let you know. I also want to give a quote from Prabhupada. Prabhupada was very concerned beginning in the mid-70s that the scientific basis of Krishna consciousness be presented. And he felt that there was huge progress in the area of science. At his time, it was, of course, post-Sputnik, and astronauts and all kinds of, and computers were becoming of age. We've progressed so much since then. And Prabhupada's point was, we do not condemn any scientific advancement. I want to say that again. We do not condemn scientific advancement. Our problem is the lack of philosophical approach. I'll give you an example. The idea that life comes from matter has many philosophical problems associated with it. Yet it's common thought that life just comes from matter. So Prabhupada's first conference in '77, which 5 of us spoke at, was Life Comes from Life. That was the name of it. So Prabhupada said, and I'll quote, "We are not animals that we should condemn scientific knowledge, but we should know the origin, not that life is coming from chemicals." So that is a key point. A second area, of course, we work in is cosmology, which takes us to cosmogenesis, which takes us to the same issue again. How does it all begin? Which comes first, consciousness or matter? Fortunately, in the last 10 years, there's been a sea change in the intellectual world. One prominent scholar, I mentioned this in my talk at the beginning, one prominent theologian from Notre Dame, Hart, said, "I used to, as an anti-physicalist, as someone who accepts that consciousness doesn't come from matter, I was such an outlier. I was on the edge of society, on the edge of the intellectual community. Now I'm becoming in the center." And then he jokingly says, "What went wrong?" Well, this is the opportunity at the BI. So any one of you who are listening would like to work with us. We need writers, we need philosophers, Sanskritists, and of course, scientists. Send a letter to those addresses. I'll personally connect you with the right department of the BI, and you can see how you can engage. If you can't directly work with us, you can work indirectly. Krishna talks in the 12th canto. If you can't surrender everything to me, give the fruits of your work. We obviously accept donations. As the director, if I didn't say that, I would be negligent of my duties. And but we really would like your help. So I'm going to turn this back to Kunal Nikandadi, I believe next, our Dean of Academics, and the one who pushes us to be more philosophical all the time. I think next is Hridayananda Goswami. Am I right on that, Kunal?
I will request both H.D. Goswami and Akandadi to actually maybe switch on their videos. And Akandadi does have one slide to present, so maybe you
Let him go then, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, let Akandadi go.
All right.
I'll present this slide, which I hope will, lead into discussion and comments by Maharaj. Okay, I hope this is now clear. This is a little matrix.
Yeah, you can go into presenter mode if possible.
Oh, yes, I can do that. Takes a moment to think about it. This is a matrix that we established a few years ago in order to clarify the extent of the mission that is in front of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and it's not small. We have identified 4 publics. One is the BI itself. When I say public, these are our audiences. We need to work with devotee scientists, help them understand each other's work, understand the metaphysics of the Bhagavatam, help them understand how their work in their scientific field applies and how it can really contribute to the overall picture. And then there's ISKCON, the more general devotees who may not be scientifically trained, but who have an interest in this. and who read Prabhupada's books and have questions and need to be helped in ways to think about those questions and find answers which really mean something to them. And in that way, then they can also perhaps be involved in the outreach. They can advocate for this type of vision of reality based on consciousness. And then we have the general public. We must reach them, although they are heavily indoctrinated. And if you ask them where life comes from or where the universe has come from, they're going to say, yep, there's matter and there's evolution and then there's Big Bang. They will repeat that because that is what they have been told is the intellectual position. And no one wants to be seen as simple or naive or gullible. And at the same time, there's a turning away from organized religion, but not necessarily spirituality. Religion seems to be institutionalized to the point, and we heard this from Bhaktivedanta Swami earlier in the series, that institutional religion seems to cater for, if you like, the expectations that the religion is going to do something for me, rather than what is my spiritual path, what is the process, the discipline that I must undertake in order to achieve a higher state of awareness of myself and of God. And so the public is ripe for this. Although they may cite the standard scientific arguments, in their hearts, they are not satisfied. And I would suggest that a vast majority of them believe that there must be something more. They may not want to call that something more God, but there's something more than birth to death, and that being it. So huge opportunity for us. And of course, there's the academic world. This is where all these theories that are lack in philosophy, when they interpret scientific evidence and postulate all sorts of ideas that consciousness can come from the brain, even though that's not understood, that life comes from it, not understood, evolution of species, not understood. And the poor academics, you see, they take it on faith that the neuroscientists have got consciousness sorted out. And then someone else thinks, well, and the biologists, they've got life sorted out, haven't they? And then the biologists and neuroscientists think the physicists and cosmologists have got the universe and physics worked out, and everything is a matter. So no one realizes that actually everyone else's ideas are wanting. So there is scope to go in and interact in ways that bring a greater philosophical approach to the academic world. In a few of the big conferences I've been going to recently, people come up and they ask, so what's your thing? What are you into? And I explain Science and Philosophy Initiative. Our idea is that we want to make scientists more philosophically astute, and we want to make philosophers more scientifically literate. And they go, oh, that's a good idea. So there is an opening. So those are our four publics. And of course, we have looked at the horizontal bands dealing with the key epistemological approaches of science, of philosophy, and of theology and spirituality. And from the combination of these three epistemologies with each of these audiences, we have identified how we hope to help them. So with the BI in science, we want to help them enable and engage devotee scholars in the mission of BI and in interacting with others, and to be current with the latest scientific ideas, and not to promote pseudoscience or misunderstandings. Philosophy, we need to develop the philosophy of science for the BI, and we need them to appreciate and reveal the deep metaphysics that is embedded in our Shastra, specifically Srimad Bhagavatam. And theologically and spiritually, we want to help devotee scientists have a Siddhantic foundation, with hermeneutics as the basis for discussion, and to reconcile their work in the scientific field and devotional life. There is no reason why there should be a conflict. But many devotees actually work in that situation where they seem conflicted. I'm a scientist at work, and all day I'm doing this, that, and the other. But when I go home, I can do puja and be a devotee. No, we need that more integrated. With ISKCON, in science, we want to inspire and excite devotees that Krishna consciousness can be seen there in scientific evidence. We want to dignify and appreciate the scientific method, not denigrate it, and look at its role, but also its limits. We, in philosophy, want to increase awareness of philosophy of science. That is one of the key aspects. I think Maharaj may speak on that in a few minutes. Epistemology and the contribution of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In theology, obviously, we want to strengthen faith in the Shruti Pramana. There is amazing material in the Bhagavatam. Often, devotees skim over it because it doesn't quite work for them, and they're not sure how to deal with it. But there's amazing stuff, and we want to show that we are true to Krishna conscious theology. And in this one, we need to discuss and educate ourselves and our devotees in terms of hermeneutics, how we read Prabhupada's books, how we understand aspects of reality that is beyond our senses. For the public, in science, we want to promote consciousness as a legitimate and important topic, because that's the key. Consciousness is the Achilles heel of physical science. It's what's caused a new look at not just neuroscience, but biology and physics. So we want to promote the study of consciousness and help people understand that's where they start from, and that the BI has valid messages in science. And we're not just some religious fanatics, but we have valid messages. And we want to inspire people to find, to appreciate, and to explore the perspectives of the Srimad Bhagavatam as it deals with our existence and broader reality. And in theology, we want to inspire the public to explore the Gaudiya Vaishnava tools of a spiritual science. So if all of this works, then are there ways to put this into practice as a science of the subjective on my own consciousness? And look at the methodology and to discover the Krishna conscious vision of personalism that exists behind the mysteries of nature and our own existence. And for academia, we want to demonstrate to academics we are legitimate scientists. Again, we're not just fanatics trying to sell our brand. We're legitimate science. We want to look at what are the facts and how to understand those facts. And our methodology is valid, and we want to enter the academic discourse. We want to use philosophy with the academic world to expand upon the themes of science. It has its limitations. It needs the backing of science. So we want to encourage scientists to think more philosophically. And science has its limits. And metaphysics that are open to theism are needed to understand the deeper mysteries and greater context of reality. That it's wrong to say there can be no God in science. If this metaphysical framework allows for there to be a source of reality that is conscious, then that has to be considered as a valid proposition. So these are the different approaches from our matrix. I think it was really interesting to hear from Russia, and therefore there are 4 steps or stages that they're working through in order to develop a framework that can then be taken and adopted by the academic world. And I think that's a very nice addition to how we in the BI were seeing it. So I'm going to stop my share, pass it back to Kumudvan Brajesh.
HD Goswami, we would like to hear from you, please.
Okay, I'll think about it. Let's see. Here we go. So thank you very much. Thank you. Kumudvan actually deserves a lot of credit, because as Brahmatirtha said, this was our first attempt, or Kumudvan might have said that, but actually this is probably the greatest gathering of devotee scholars ever. So obviously there's room for improvement, but it was a tremendous accomplishment, and it was put together in a relatively short time. I'd like to sort of follow up on some of the things that were already said. For one thing, in terms of our audience, I think we should probably retire the phrase "the mass of people," because if you look at Lord Chaitanya's own outreach for the mass of people, he did kirtan, Harinam Kirtan, and then for educated people, he did philosophy and so on. So, of course, our target audience is not merely academic scientists and philosophers, because for two reasons. Number one, often they're the last ones to figure out what's really going on. And number two, because many of them are predisposed towards sort of foolish materialism. So I think there's not only academic specialists and then the mass of people. There are educated people. They may be dentists, they may be lawyers, they may be many things, but they are the people that read. So I'd like to say the reading public rather than the mass of people that generally don't read. Another point is that Akhandeti was pointing out that we have to help the people in general to understand. In America, there was recently, I think it was a Gallup poll or some poll by a well-known polling service that said that actually over 80%, maybe 81% of people in America believe in God. And so people that believe in God do not believe that evolution takes place by itself. So the, let's say, atheistic evolutionary theory certainly has a lot of influence among academics, but then again, how much influence do academics have? So apparently not enough to get a significant number of people in the United States to believe in unaided, unguided, materialistic evolution. So the people in general already accept our basic points, that there is a God. And probably most of them would argue, yeah, there's some kind of soul that continues. So, and as we know, scholarship in general is going in that direction. There was a long-term study by Harvard, many other top universities, where they were exploring near-death experiences, and people who, let's say, clinically died. Maybe they're on the operating table and clinically, technically they die, but they come back and they report things they saw, such as conversations between doctors and nurses and so on. They report things that took place when that patient was clinically dead. So how they heard it, how they knew about it, and sometimes the information which would require sort of an aerial view, which would require people to be above. There's all kinds of things like that. And the interesting point here is that Harvard and all these other universities, they studied for, a long, long time because they were determined to find a material explanation. They wanted to make sure that this phenomena did not threaten the sort of the foolish academic consensus of materialism. And they couldn't find one. And they finally admitted that we can't find any material explanation for this. So however this happened, it cannot be explained materially according to our present material knowledge. So there's a lot going on today. Also, I think we have to ask the question, if our goal is to make the world Krishna conscious, or at least to establish Krishna consciousness as taught by Prabhupada as a leading light in the world, as something which influences and guides very significant numbers of people, then we have to ask a socio-historical question. How do changes like that take place in time, in history? And is there some way we can take advantage of that knowledge of history so that we can become influential? And the answer is right there in Lord Chaitanya's own pastimes. Lord Chaitanya appeared as a great scholar. His leading devotees were great scholars, such as the six Goswamis and other devotees, Sarvabhauma and Prakashananda and so on, who Lord Chaitanya converted and who were already great scholars. So Prabhupada always used to say that the Varna system, Brahmin and Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, is natural, and those four classes are there everywhere, but they're just not organized properly. So, and Prabhupada also said all the time that his movement is meant to put a head on the headless society. That head is the Brahmin class. So therefore, you have to ask the question, as a historian, as a sociologist, how is it that within history, groups of people become accepted as the legitimate teachers of society? And there are various answers. For example, in Lord Chaitanya's time, you had to know certain curricula. You had to know grammar, Sanskrit grammar. You had to know logic, nyaya, and shastra, and so on. Nowadays, at least in the Western countries, there are different criteria. The basic principle is the same. You have to know things. You have to be learned. So Lord Chaitanya himself was learned. His leading preachers were learned. Practically all of the, or a strong majority of Lord Chaitanya's intimate associates wrote books. They were authors. They were scholars. So not that everyone has to be a scholar. However, ISKCON needs to establish more and more a powerful scholarly wing that will establish the Vaishnavas, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, as the natural teachers of society, because one of the most important forms of evidence, even in Western logic, is hearing from authority. And so you have to be accepted by society as an authority, and then people listen. So there are different ways, different times and places in history that one establishes oneself as an authority. It used to be that you could converse in Latin, at least in Europe, and you knew the Old and New Testaments very well. You passed certain curriculum in the scholastic universities of the late Middle Ages and so on. Nowadays, there are certain ways by which people establish themselves as learned authorities. We need to do that so that from the platform of being learned authorities, scholars in society, we can teach Krishna consciousness, which is the most important subject matter. That's why the BI is so important. And of course, as it was shown, there are so many different affiliates and so many programs. So all of these programs together, as they grow, as they improve their own understanding and presentation, establishing Prabhupada's followers, at least the relevant ones, as important scholars. This is the way historically that religions establish themselves as authoritative, and then people start to take their theology seriously. This is what Lord Chaitanya did. It's what the Jesuits did on the Christian side, Dominicans. It's just the way history works. So as they say, don't try to reinvent the wheel. There are just certain standard ways throughout history that spiritual movements or religious movements establish themselves. One way, which is not available to us, is that you kill everyone that doesn't accept you. That worked, it seemed to work, at least in terms of recruiting numbers. It seemed to work well for Christians and Muslims especially. But of course, it also involved a lot of evil barbarism, namely murdering innocent people. So that's not really an option for us for moral reasons and just for various reasons. We're not going to do that. So, but the option that we do have, and the best option we have, is becoming society's teachers. And that's what the BI and all the affiliates and allies, that's what it's all about. So thank you very much. I'd like to again thank Kumudvan for his extraordinary ability to get a lot of important people to participate and to do that in a very short time. Very impressive. Also Brahmatirtha Prabhu, the director of the BI, who sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes in front of the scenes, is doing so much. That's him there. Still youthful. So,
right, thank you very much,
Hare Krishna.
Swami, and to all the panelists. There have been a couple of questions that have been repeatedly asked throughout this summer school, and maybe Bob Cohen, you could quickly answer those, and we'll take this to a close. So one of the questions is, with the recordings, where do we find for this summer school, and when will they be posted?
We will, through all of those who are registered and on the list, we will send that out. It will also be posted on the
We aren't able to hear you for
You
some
lost you,
reason.
BP.
Yeah, okay, it's back now. We'll also be on the BI website, which we'll put in the chat right now. I'm not sure when it'll be posted. The answer is very soon. Okay.
And the second question was, if we want to get closely involved with the BI, are there any spots available, and what is the best means?
Well, the best means would be to either write to me, and I'll steer somebody in the right direction, or they could write to you, and I'm putting both emails in the chat. Let me see, I'll send it to everyone. I'm putting it in the chat right now, along with our website. Okay, it's there.
All right, thank you very much. And yeah, it's been a fantastic summer school, at least for me. So I thank again the panelists for today, Bob Cohen, HD Goswami, and Akandadi. Thank you very much for, really your immense contributions throughout the summer school. I also want to thank the persons who work behind the scenes, especially Arya and Leela, and perhaps a few others who I don't even know about. So thank you very much for making all the technical things happen and working behind the scenes to make this event a grand success. And of course, thanking all the participants who have been very patient and really clung to this either live YouTube stream or this webinar on Zoom for the 4 days of the summer school. Next year, we hope to have a better, bigger, and a much more detailed summer school. So please stay tuned for that. If any of the participants here are especially maybe students or early career professors of science and philosophy or doctors of medicine, and also, Sanskrit experts, please do connect, and we will be happy to work with you actually on various interesting projects. So thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned for the next big event, which will be next year's summer school. Please take care.
Thank you very much, Kamudvan, Rajesh.
Have a great day, everyone. Yeah.
Congratulations to you and all the team. And thanks again to all the participants. See you next year, or sooner if possible.
Thank you.